Tyson and Connor, and I'm looking for Ashley Phillips. And Tanya, you probably didn't hear from her today, but it is 6:01, so I am going to start the meeting.
Piece of that reduction.
And everyone needs to be on mute there. Good. Okay. With that, I call the November 12th, 2020 Peninsula School District Board of Directors regular business meeting to order. Tyson, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United
States of
States
America
of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tyson. On March 24th, 2020, the leadership of Washington's legislature issued statutory waivers and suspensions related to Open Public Meetings Act and the Public Records Act. The waivers and suspensions have been extended multiple times, most recently extending these waivers and suspensions through December 7th, 2020. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.12, the Peninsula School District Board of Directors is prohibited from conducting meetings in person. Therefore, this meeting will be held virtually. Prior notice has been given to the community regarding how to watch this meeting live stream online and how to listen to the meeting through the telephone. Instructions were also provided on how to provide public comment to the board. With regards to routine matters, board members have reviewed the agenda and have had the opportunity to clarify questions with the superintendent prior to the board meeting. Such matters are often processed without additional comments or debate. We'll move to the agenda, and with that, I would like to move item number 10, the superintendent search update, to follow item number 5, comments from the student representatives. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda, which includes moving item number 10, superintendent update, to follow item number 5, comments from student reps?
Yeah, I'll make that motion to approve.
Thank you, Chuck. Is there a second?
Second.
David, okay, thank you. It has been moved by Chuck and seconded by David to approve the amended agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? The motion is carried and the approved amended agenda is approved. With that, I would like to begin tonight's meeting and take a few moments to recognize and appreciate so many who are working tirelessly to educate our students during the pandemic. We all agree, ultimately our children need to be in the classroom. It has always been the board and the district's intent to bring students into our schools as safely and as soon as possible. The dual platform established last July has allowed the district to offer remote learning for all and in-person for some. I am pleased we have transitioned traditional education to remote learning. And while we realize remote learning is not ideal, we continue to improve the remote experience and are hearing encouraging stories of students engaging and thriving in this environment. We are appreciative of state funding and the county's efforts to provide Wi-Fi to the majority of our students and staff, allowing remote access across our district. The district has successfully and safely brought some of our youngest and most at-risk students to schools for in-person learning with zero transmission of COVID cases in any of our kindergarten and first grade classes. We recognize and understand the challenges our families, staff, and students face with the frequent changes to our in-person plans, and we appreciate everyone's flexibility. Please know these adjustments are being made in an attempt to safely keep our youngest in person and return other students to the classroom as soon as possible. As a board, we recognize it has been a heavy lift by so many to offer both in-person and remote learning. It has taken tremendous efforts and coordination of many, including our board, superintendent, local health department, our district staff, principals, unions, teachers, paraeducators, our front office staff, maintenance and custodial crews, bus drivers and kitchen staff, our parents, and so many more to successfully provide in-person learning. We are so grateful for the efforts of all. Our board is especially grateful for the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department's guidance and partnership as we continue to educate our students in safe environments. We are thankful to Dr. Anthony Chen, County Executive Bruce Dammeier, and Councilmember Derek Young for recognizing the extraordinary efforts our district has already made to safely bring students into our classrooms. Our efforts have provided the opportunity for the Peninsula School District to further partner with the health department to offer a testing program and provide additional safety precautions for our students, staff, and families. We appreciate this partnership and we continue to plan for future safe return of more students. Well, we currently are experiencing a significant uptrend in COVID cases in the general population of Gig Harbor and Key Peninsula's communities. We must move forward cautiously and in partnership with the health department as we consider to return more students. As a community, we need to all do our part, especially during the upcoming holiday season, by wearing a mask and socially distance in an effort to reopen schools to all grades. On behalf of the board, I thank you for working together as a community. Thank you for allowing me to share those comments tonight on behalf of the board. With that, I now ask Superintendent Jarvis to share his superintendent's report with the board.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'm going to give a very brief but somewhat eclectic report tonight, starting with what happens if it snows. It was interesting earlier this fall to hear kids or some of our young people lamenting the fact that they might never again have a snow day in remote learning. I'm here tonight to tell them that we actually will be, if necessary, having a snow day. As we've analyzed our position, with some students in person, some students online, with some staff in schools and some staff at home, it just became one. And I have to admit, I borrowed the phrase from a superintendent. I saw the comment from New Jersey of one of the few things we can do for our kids these days is to give them something that was normal, and that is giving them a snow day if it's justified. So I'm sure there will be from tonight on some students rooting for snow with the first storms that come in. It may seem odd with a lot of our students on full remote learning, but for the system as a whole, it actually works better. We can still guarantee 180 days of school for the young people and make it work. So I just report for most of our youngest people out there, if it snows, there will still be the possibility of snow days. If it's not justified, then we'll just run a little bit late, which will probably make everybody unhappy. But you can root for snow. A second item I wanted to mention tonight is really our food services. And you've heard compliments over and over, but today I happen to have a chance to talk with Katie Walters, our food service supervisor, as she has planned the food for Thanksgiving, and she's planned the food for the winter holidays and break, so that there will be food packages for our families and for our kids that they can count on. And I think it's just an exceptional group of all summer, all spring, all fall. They have just gone out of their way to find every possible way of serving young people and families in need and making sure that the food service works. So my extreme gratitude, thanks, and appreciation for an outstanding crew. And as they were we were all thinking about Thanksgiving and what might work. The only thing Katie said was, I can't do the gravy. Well, one of the kids' favorite was the gravy, so it's going to be a little different than that. I would also compliment Amy Gordon and the communications crew. Among many other things that you've seen coming out of the communications world, they are working on a local dashboard and try to really help our patrons to be able to look and say, if has there been a case in my school, or has there been a situation, is there a close contact? How do we share that information without violating any confidences and any of the protection requirements? So Amy Gordon and crew have come up with a solution, and we were just finalizing some of the elements today of how to do that. But shortly you will see a data dashboard emerge that's for the Peninsula School District. Then I would join Madam President as we talk about working with the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department and working on the logistics to become a pilot program. It looks right now like 3 of the school districts will be participating. 1 may not be participating, but we will be. And we are working out the logistics. But one question I wanted to answer very loud and clear, and the question came up quickly, is if and when we have a testing in place, does that mean you get to do away with all the masks and face coverings and other stuff? The answer is a loud, resounding, and repeated no. That's really the heart and soul of the safety and health. It has worked beautifully. It continues to work beautifully. There's been a major study released in the last few days that says, in fact, those health countermeasures taken by schools will enable us to continue to serve students and to eventually return more. But we will be continuing all of the safety and health protocols, even as testing is added as an additional measure. So I join you, Madam President, and really the whole board in saying thank you to the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department in joining us in a pilot program, helping us find ways to make it work, and just reminding people that all of the good work they have done. If you haven't had a chance to watch 5 and 6-year-olds with their face masks on, their face coverings, they have done an absolutely perfect job. They are wonderful troopers. And I know there was some fear early on that somehow it would be bothersome or the kids might take them off. The fact is they're doing a fantastic job. So thank you, parents and staff, for all of the work that you put in. And therefore, I'm going to stop right there on a short superintendent's report. I think last meeting it was about an hour and a half. So I'm just making sure it's much shorter tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jarvis, and a lot of information. And I know my kids will be mostly excited about the snow days. So thank you. With that, I move to our student representatives, and I'll start with Connor from Gig Harbor High School tonight. Hi, Connor.
Hello. So still doing online learning. It's still it's a little bit difficult, but I'm glad to hear that the younger kids are able to go back, and the health organization was allowing the younger students to return. As for sports, still very similar to last update. They're still able to have practices through December, I believe, and that is it may get extended as it develops and we get more information on how everybody's doing. As for leadership, they just finished up their Veterans Day. I don't want to say I guess celebrations, but activities and all the stuff that they did for the veterans. And they're working to try and they're starting on the winter kind of things, activities for the students and teachers to see how exactly what we're able to do for those things. We're not able to have a Tide Fest this year, which is our art kind of, I don't want to say auction, but like festival that we have where we sell art to gain money for the artists in our school. So we are unable to have that, but we're still trying to work on different events so that students would be able to come and be, part of the school, hopefully by the end of the year. And then it's kind of a senior thing, but scholarship notebooks were available today through 6 o'clock. So people are starting to able to be working on that, and that's roughly about it. So.
You're muted, Debbie.
Mute.
Yep.
Thank you, Connor. I was saying that we really enjoyed watching how the schools were creative with their Veterans Assembly or celebrations. Chuck, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, you were just telling me I'm on mute. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Connor. Tyson from Peninsula High School.
Hello, everyone. Kind of the same thing to report with Connor. Our school just wrapped up our Veterans Day celebration where we honored the veterans we had our leadership classes, all 3 of our leadership classes, including some English classes, got in on writing letters to veterans, and we delivered those letters to the Retzel Veterans Home up in Port Orchard. And we did collab with Gig Harbor, and we were able to get the Gig Harbor letters and get those up for Veterans Day. So the veterans up there at the Retzel home were able to get letters from students knowing that they're still in our minds, that we still care about them. So that was a good collab with Gig Harbor. We also got I'm not sure if you saw, but we got the United for a Cause fundraiser all done, the competition fundraiser between Gig Harbor and Peninsula to raise money for the American Cancer Society. So that wrapped up a couple weeks ago. As for sports updates, sports are still going on. I know that basketball is having open gyms right now with when they possible. They have designated time slots where they sign up and they're following COVID protocols. I'm not sure about the other sports at the moment. Winterfest is not able to happen like Tides Fest, unfortunately, which is a big fundraiser for ASB and for the local businesses. So that's unfortunate, but we have leadership class tomorrow, so we're still going to be brainstorming ideas on how to make some winter activities and how to make it feel as normal as possible in this remote learning environment, which is just our main goal. So we're going to give it our best shot. Hopefully we can make it fun and make the best of it.
Okay. Thanks, Tyson. And both Connor and Tyson, let us know when those fundraiser ideas you guys come up with. We certainly like to support you in the community on those. So, because I know those are big fundraisers. And I do not think Ashley's with us tonight. Do not see her name. Okay, thank you. So with that, I move to item number 10, which we've moved up on the agenda tonight. Representatives from our superintendent search firm, Northwest Leadership Associates, are here tonight, Wayne Robertson and Mark Venn, to provide us an update.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, it's not that we haven't seen you much lately, but we're glad to see you again, actually.
Right.
Well, you want me to start off, Wayne?
Yeah, why don't you start? This is kind of your point on this. Go ahead.
Okay, so we're really going to just be quick tonight. We're going to cover 2 basic things. So one of them was the results of our focus group work in your district. We actually spent 5 days in your district. I think one day we had 17 or 18 Zoom meetings where I spent a day physically in the district as well, meeting with small groups. So we canvassed your district like no district we've ever worked with. This is pretty impressive. I think kudos go out to Tanya Beatty for her help. Even though we had 36 different focus groups, there were actually more than that she had scheduled that some people couldn't come to. So thank you, Tanya, and thank you to the district for letting us come in and getting this input from all different constituents in your district. The part I'm going to talk about tonight, then Wayne's going to talk a little bit about the brochure, is the common threads reports you have. The other report you have is, or you will get, is much more lengthy than that. But what we did is go through the comments from each of the groups. There were 36 groups. There were 186 participants. And we went through there and tried to kind of put together common threads that we saw of comments that came up. And every group we met with, we followed the same format. We talked about the process and what that looked like. And then we went in and asked 3 questions. Number 1, what are your celebrations? What can you say that's great about the district? Number 2, what are the challenges that a new superintendent will face when they come in to the Peninsula School District? And number 3, what are the attributes you're looking for? And I think you should be very proud of not only the celebrations, but how well thought out people's answers were. There was nobody that was just totally off. No comments that were really out of what you would expect when you're dealing with a lot of the work that you're dealing with right now. When you look at the common threads, the report I gave you, really there shouldn't be a whole lot to surprise you. The top 5 or 6 were really the ones that in each category. You probably have it in front of you, I think, do you, Chuck and David and everybody and Lori, Natalie? So it's the top 5 probably are, I mean, you should be celebrating your community, your partnerships. You have a lot of work to do with constructing 4 new elementary schools and remodeling 2 middle schools, obviously. But the big celebration by far, every group, there was not one group that didn't say this, was the passage of your bond and your levies. So that was huge. Somebody asked me, what's different from 5 years ago? That's different. And the pandemic, of course, is different. But that's really the common thread that came out. I think from a board perspective, they're right about in the middle, past the middle, there was some real positive celebrations about the board relationship with each other. The community and the superintendent, they felt that a lot of people felt that the board now, the current board is supportive, and there were a lot of positive vibes for that. Any questions on celebrations? There's a lot to celebrate in this district, and certainly they came forward with those. Even the COVID response got a lot of positive feedback too. It wasn't just a challenge, it was a lot of positive as well. So that's something you should be very proud of. The challenges, of course, there are many challenges. There are many challenges in any district where we do a search in. Top of the list by far were the COVID challenges that we all face that Dr. Jarvis addressed, and so did your board president at the start of the meeting. But a lot of it has to do with loss of FTE, the funding, the reopening, what's that going to look like? The communication system, how do we communicate all this? Was very important to people. And then there's going to have to be some build back of trust too. There's when you make changes like you have, and you've done things to address this, there's some trust issues. Communications, big. You have a district that is not only to the community, but also within your district. Communications is a challenge. You have a changing, as you well know, a changing community. The diversity is changing, socioeconomic and social changes too. 4 schools, constructing 4 schools during a pandemic crisis. What a challenge that is, huge challenge. And you're making really good progress on that. And then of course you have 2 communities. You have 2 main communities. I guess the last couple I wanted to mention, there was a lot of talk about haves and have-nots. And that was the term people used. And they're talking about the socioeconomic inequities, disparities, and some of the services that are going to be a challenge. Another one I wanted to mention was there was a lot of comments about a strategic plan, about the need for a strategic plan, the need for a vision. And this is something when a new superintendent comes in working with the board, that's something that can be tackled right away. And I know it's on your radar screen as a board, but I wanted to mention that. And then the last one, I think the last bullet, the transparent communication and building trust. That's a huge piece too. It's just, and that can be done. I mean, there's nothing on there that can't be addressed. It's not impossible to address and work for. So all those challenges, and maybe the top 5 or 6, are there any questions? Because that's going to be part of the brochure, I would think. Any questions on any of those?
Any questions, guys? I would like to say that, very I know you're going to go to the attributes, but I really appreciate all of the community members that stepped up and were part of these surveys. And while we're just getting a summary tonight, I know that the board members will see all of the feedback from all participants, and we'll take that as we go through the process. So again, this information is really valuable and we appreciate the participation.
Yeah, this information just isn't valuable putting the brochure together. It's valuable when we get to the end of the search too, when we're making decisions on who we move forward and all that and who you choose. So the attributes, that's the one everybody wants to get to right away, but we kind of hold them to their feet to the stone, to the floor, and say, no, that's the last thing. So they give them a lot of time to think. Obviously, you want somebody who's visible, good communicator, somebody that can capitalize on this COVID challenge and move the district forward. That's a big part. Somebody who's a visionary, the strategic plan's part of that. And then there are a lot of others, but I think the top 5 or 6 are probably the biggest one. I think the last one, though, is probably the most important, that you want somebody with a heart and passion for kids. And that's really important. And that was brought up, and I had to mention that. It wasn't brought up by everybody, but it is a big, important piece to that. So all those are attributes that, you know, somebody that could walk on water, they could probably come in and do that. But there are some things there. There's some major things there. I think that you'll want to work with. People were really adamant that that new soup should live in the district. And that's important, that they kind of put their feet in the water and really embrace the community. And that was very important to most of the groups. A few of them said no, but most of them said yeah. So any questions on attributes?
No?
Okay, so I'm glad it's hopefully it's pretty clear, and you can use this for the next steps. So Wayne, you want to talk about the next steps?
So the focus group, you know, one of the things that we wanted to do from the very front end of the search was to involve a lot of people and have the process be very transparent. So with all of our focus group conversations, we made sure that people knew that there are 4 ways that they could be involved in the search, and that the board and the district wanted people to be involved in the search. And I could ask Connor and Tyson to tell us the four ways, but I won't do that. But I know that they could. You know, the online survey, the focus groups, and 2 rounds of interviews. Right, Connor? Right, Tyson? Yeah, they're right there with it. So, so we take the information from the focus groups, and we that becomes the foundation for the brochure. And as you recall, the brochure is an electronic document that'll go out to our distribution list, about 3,000 plus people all over the country. And then Mark and I use it in our targeted recruiting as well. And then you'll have it available off of your website, and it may show up other places as well. And the content of it is some information about the district, information about the community, and then we take the challenges and the desired characteristics, and that becomes what the candidates use as a writing prompt for their written submittal that goes along with their application. And we'll take those top few attributes and those top few challenges, blend them together, and get you a document that represents what you're looking for in your next superintendent. What we'll start doing right away is working on a draft of it. We'll pass it back and forth with Mark and myself and our desktop publisher. And then when we think it's pretty close, we'll start running it by probably Tanya and Amy and whomever else you think should be involved in the front end of it. And it doesn't get finalized until the board president says it's ready to go out. And then we launch it, and then it goes out to our distribution list and is available for us. Probably take us a week, maybe a little more to get it back and forth and get it ready to go. But you're going to be pleased. I think this process and all the engagement that you had in the process, and then the information about the community, it's going to be a document that represents the search and the community and the district very well, and it'll get what we need in terms of the recruiting and generation of the applicant pool that we're after. So, questions about any of that?
David?
David? Yeah.
Yeah, so just to be clear, in your comment, Wayne, prior to it going out, every school board member will get an opportunity to read it, provide feedback for final edits before it goes out.
Absolutely.
Yes, we as a board, we give the final approval on it, so. Any other questions? Any more update, Mark and Wayne?
Just thanks
No, just,
everybody for the participation. It's a new high watermark for us, and it just shows that people want to be engaged in the search. That's great.
Yeah,
Yes.
and if you have a district you should be proud of. There's a lot of positive things going on. And even if you look into the challenges and that the attributes of really reflect the positive things that they want. People want to move forward and are ready to move forward. And I think that's something that you can look forward to. So kudos to you guys.
Good job.
All right, thank you for the update. We look forward to future updates and the work that you did. I was pleased to hear that this was the largest focus group feedback you've gotten on superintendent. So that was good for you guys. And Tanya, again, I echo what they said. Thank you for organizing all of that. I know it was a big job, so thank you. Okay, thank you, Mark and Wayne.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. See you in December.
Yeah, see you in December. Move on to comments from the community. We will be taking public comment tonight. Prior notice has been communicated to the public on how to submit their comments in writing and how to register to speak. All commenters participating via Zoom are in an online waiting room and will be allowed one at a time into the meeting to speak to the school board for up to 3 minutes. Okay, so we will move on to Katie Russell. I think. Oh, sorry. We will start with Carol Rivera. Hi, Carol.
Hi, good evening. I just want to reintroduce myself. For those who don't know, my name is Carol Rivera and I'm the president of the Peninsula Education Association. Tonight I'm speaking on behalf of my membership, over 600 certificated educators who are passionately committed to teaching, counseling, providing therapy or related services to the students of Peninsula School District. We're a diverse group of educators who work with students from ages 3 to 21 and whose professional expertise is among the most highly educated and experienced in the state of Washington. We're also community members, parents, volunteers, and neighbors. We are deeply vested in the success of our students and the health and welfare of our community. I've watched the COVID pandemic destroy our sense of normalcy, but more concerning, creates rifts between groups that now more than ever need to be working together so that our students are successful. We have and will continue to work tirelessly navigating the appropriate channels to take actionable steps to ensure our employer, the Peninsula School District, is meeting the health and safety requirements outlined by labor and industries, local and state health departments, and operating within OSB guidance during the pandemic. We need you, our board, to recognize teaching and learning that has not been easy during the pandemic. We care deeply for our students and their families. We are working hard, connecting with students, building relationships, teaching content on a virtual platform, and not everything translates. Other staff teaching in person need to adapt every aspect of their day to account for 6-foot distancing, mask wearing, and to maintain all the safety standards while simultaneously running effective and engaging classroom learning environments. We have many others who are gracefully juggling both realms, running from classroom to classroom in person, and then transitioning to remote instruction or therapies. The demands of our job have educators nearing their breaking point. They need to be supported. They need to know the district not only sees their hard work and commitment, but honors it and celebrates their efforts. More importantly, puts the health and well-being of students and staff above all else. Safety is a shared value, and public health is a community responsibility. We all share that responsibility. We have raised overwhelming concerns about the district's rush to return students to class when health guidance indicates it's unsafe to do so. Teaching during COVID is beyond stressful. 12-hour workdays, last-minute decisions, reversals, coupled with messaging that our best isn't good enough. It's exhausting living at the mercy of the next email to learn the most recent change to instructional model or health department guidance. A recent survey of our membership reveals that more than 2/3 of our members are concerned about exposure to COVID. We want to be back into school face-to-face with our students, but we want to be so safely. Staff at Peninsula High School are especially concerned after multiple COVID cases forced PHS to return to remote instruction this week and worry the building is rushing to resume and expand in-person services too soon after the outbreak. 75% of staff no longer understand what, if any, metrics the district is using to decide how to expand in-person learning, nor do they understand what would trigger dialing back to remote. The district's invitation from the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department to pilot rapid testing has contributed to the confusion. Testing protocols are still in development, while positive cases and infection rates in Pierce County and locally soar to their highest levels yet. There is deep worry that adding a testing protocol would relax safety standards. A plan is far different than having the specific people, equipment, and resources in place. Our educators have the best understanding of what can work. Please continue to listen to us when we share what our schools need to operate safely during the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And I think we now have Mary West. Hi, Mary.
Good evening.
Hi.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Mary West. I am the Vice President of the Peninsula Education Association. And I just want to share some thoughts. I just want to be clear. Our staff want to be in schools with students. We love that. It is our heart and where we're at. We question the safety of our in-person instruction based on Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department numbers. Our local numbers in Key Peninsula and Gig Harbor are both on the rise. We're both in the high area, and we continue to rise. We're entering the flu season. We've got gatherings with the holidays coming. Governor Jay Inslee was just on the news tonight emphasizing we need to change what we're doing. We need to stick within our pods, so to speak, within the groups that we're socializing with our families. He's asking the whole state to pull back on that and do things differently this year. We need to take those words of advice seriously and implement that into our schools as well. When we work with our students, it's not just bringing back our students. There are so many ripples coming along with that. As K-1 coming in, our students who get EL services, special ed services, therapies, all those exposures expand the number of exposures and contacts for our students and our staff. And so thinking of what Governor Inslee just said, keep that in mind. It's about the safety of staff and students. We all want to be back, but let's be cautious about it. Carol talked a little bit about the confirmed exposures that Peninsula High School, Gig Harbor High School, Purdy, we don't want to wait until this gets out of control. We want to get in front of it and keep safety at the forefront for all members of the community. It's a pandemic and lives are lost. I'm telling you right now, I have lost three cousins since August due to this pandemic. This is no laughing matter at all. This is nothing to be taken lightly. It is very serious. And when we look at individuals who've been approved to work remotely and they're being questioned or pressured by administration or colleagues, it is just not okay. It is not okay to feel bad because you can't be in a building because it's a health and safety issue. And it is a health and safety issue for all staff and all students when we continue to expand on the exposures and contacts for our students. It's not a sense of just being scared and not wanting to work. That's not the case. We want to work. We want to be with our kids, but we need to be safe.
Thank you, Mary. That was your 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we have Katie Russell. Hi, Katie.
Hi. Tonight I want to talk directly to the board, and thank you to both of the teacher union representatives for talking on behalf of the teachers and the families. But tonight I want to talk directly to the board about last month's meeting. I was very disheartened to see how our elected officials responded to the update from the Tacoma Pierce County Health District. Instead of focusing on how to comply with the recommendations, the conversation pivoted to who to blame and shifting responsibilities. Going so far as to encourage parents to call Dr. Chen personally, sharing his number, and attempting to discredit him publicly. I would like to remind the board they represent the PSD community. As we are searching for a new superintendent, I'm concerned we will not be getting strong candidates based upon how this board conducts themselves, how they communicate with teachers and families, and how they're making these very tough decisions. No one is responsible for creating this pandemic, but we all have the responsibility about how we respond and how we conduct ourselves. I'm asking the board to remember that they are our elected officials, that their actions reflect on our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, and I don't think, Chris, there's any more that have signed up. So we will move on to our district reports. We have the Department of Learning and Innovation, I believe Ms. Melissa Weisner and Chris Hagel. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, everyone. Good to see all of you.
Good to see you.
Well, Chris and I are very excited to come before you and share with you some of the work that's been happening. I'd like to start with Natalie Boyle and Ashley Ortenzo, and they're going to provide you some information around the conclusion of our K-5 STEM adoption. We've been working on that for about 18 months and engaged lots and lots of voices in that, and they're going to give you all those details. This is the first read for this approval of the recommendation, which has been approved, recommendation from the K-5 STEM committee and approved at last week's instructional advisory committee. So it is all proper and ready to come to you for a first read. And then we will be back next month at the board meeting for a second read, and again, requesting approval for that adoption. So I'm going to turn it over to Ashley and Natalie and let them walk you through the work that's been done.
Thank you. I'm just going to formally introduce Ashley, and then I'll let her start her presentation. Ashley is our K-12 instructional facilitator for STEM and has led the work of this adoption committee for over a year now, and I'll have plenty of information and history to share as she shares that presentation.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You should all have access to these slides, but I think it'll be helpful to have them visible as we go. So as Melissa said, we are here to share our recommendations for the elementary STEM adoption. When this work was started in 2019, one of the initial steps was to develop an instructional vision that would guide the work throughout the process. So that is as follows. In the Peninsula School District, we believe effective instructional practice looks and sounds like students engaged in discovery through collaboration and discourse while exploring authentic phenomena and creating lasting connections to the real world. In order to bring that vision to all of our K-5 classrooms in the Peninsula School District, the Adoption Committee recommends the adoption of the STEM Scopes curriculum. I'm going to go through a little overview of that. There are also, you have a packet with additional information, more in depth than what I have here in the presentation. And there's also even more additional information on our website, which I will show you a little later as well. So I know not all of you are science teachers, so I'm going to do a real quick overview of the next generation science standards and what instruction looks like as part of the next generation science standards. With the adoption of the next generation science standards in 2013, there was a significant shift in how teachers approach science instruction. And the key piece of that shift is to focus instruction around real world, authentic phenomena and problems, and asking students, no matter the age, to dive in to solving those challenging problems and to applying their science knowledge to those phenomena and problem. You'll hear the term three-dimensional a lot, and that refers to the three parts of the next generation science standards. The disciplinary core ideas, that's the science stuff. Science and engineering practices, those are the things that scientists do to help us understand the disciplinary core ideas. And the cross-cutting concepts is how we put it all together. Things like pattern, cause and effect, how we use models to understand the world. A general overview of how the next generation science standards ask us to approach instruction. One of the strong instructional models that's frequently used to support three-dimensional instruction is the 5 E's instructional model. And STEM Scopes does use that instructional model. So I wanted to give you a quick overview of what that looks like. So you would start with an engage. That's that anchoring phenomena, that hook that gets students really interested in the problem they're going to work on solving. The explore phase is where you dig into a common experience, doing some science, figuring out what are those pieces that are going to help us solve this problem. Explain is where students pull together all the information they've learned during the explore to help develop an explanation of the phenomena they're studying. And then elaborate is where we build on the knowledge that we've built so far. Students collaborate to bring their ideas all together to eventually evaluate the solution they've come to for that phenomena that they started with. And that cycle happens over and over throughout the learning process. If we want to take a next step deeper into what does this look like with STEM Scopes, STEM Scopes is organized based on bundles and scopes. We would normally call that units and chapters, if that helps you kind of make the connection there. Every bundle, and most grade levels have 4 bundles. There's one, third grade actually has 5. Each bundle has an anchoring phenomena, that big problem we're trying to solve, and a mission that students are given at the beginning, a task, a problem they're going to be asked to solve and come back to repeatedly in that cycle of learning to build their understanding of the problem and be able to show the evidence of their learning. Within that bundle, there's going to be 2 or more scopes. Most bundles have about 3 scopes in them. And that is where you will see that 5E cycle. Engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate, come back, try it again. How do we build our understanding? One of the key pieces I want to point out here is the inclusion of differentiation in the structure of the bundle. That was one of the big things that stood out to especially our teachers on the committee that helped STEM Scope stand apart from the other curricula that we looked at, was it has really strong support for differentiating for all of our learners at every level, both our students who need additional support and our students who need additional challenge. After learning through several scopes, students are going to come back to that bundle mission and complete their bundle action plan. So as you can see, it's built on real world situations, and students are constantly cycling through and adding to their knowledge as they work through the bundles and the scopes. To dive in a little deeper, we're going to take a peek at the kindergarten storyline. So this is some more concrete examples of what are those anchoring phenomena and driving questions that our youngest learners might be looking at. So in looking at humans and the needs of organisms, so how are plants and animals, what do they need to survive? How do people affect plants and animals? they're looking at this question: what effect would humans building a hotel have on the plants and animals in the rainforest? A real thing that happens. Hotels get built in the rainforest. What effect does that have? All the learning really connected to real world problems and students getting to dive in and do project-based learning around those real world problems. Another quick example of one of the hands-on activities from a second grade Explorer. So starting with the idea that all the insects and animals that are used for pollination have become extinct. We've got to create something that's going to help us pollinate our plants so that we can still have food. They're asked to be scientists and take all the knowledge they have about parts of an insect and how pollinators do their job to create this super insect that's going to save the planet. And you can see here, there's really specific criteria that students are testing. They're involved in that engineering iterative cycle of design, test, build a prototype, test some more till they get to their final product. Our committee was comprised of 25 teachers and district staff. Throughout our committee, we represented all elementary grade levels, all of our buildings, and all of our student populations. This included 14 classroom teachers, which was at least one from each building, 3 of our STEM specialists who have been doing such a great job carrying the majority of the science instruction load over the last several years, and an administrator, and we also had 3 representatives from student services to help us make sure that we kept the voices of all of our students in the forefront of our process. Speaking of process, one of the key pieces that I feel strongly enabled this to be a successful process was the fact that all of our decision making was consensus based. So what that looks like is as the team comes to a decision making point, you get a sense for what the top option is, and then you ask everybody on the team to say, yeah, I can support it. No, I can't support it. And until we got to 90% of everyone either being able to support it, or maybe it wasn't their favorite choice, but they could still support it, then we would move forward with the next decision making. It really, there were a lot of amazingly rich discussions about the pros and cons of what pieces of which curriculum and what aspects of the standards are key for Peninsula students, and what do we really need to be able to provide that vision of K-5 STEM education that we started our process with. Back in the spring of 2019, the huge list of all possible science curriculums was narrowed down to 5: Mystery Science, TCI, FOSS, Next Gen, Amplify, and STEM Scopes. And the 5 of those went through a series of rubrics. And as we went through each new rubric, 1, sometimes 2 choices were narrowed down until we got to the point where we decided to pilot, Amplify, and STEM Scopes. Those were our last top 2. We use the Equip rubric to start with, and the Equip rubric is designed around how well does a curriculum meet the next generation science standards, including those instructional shifts of really focusing on 3-dimensional learning and having an anchoring phenomena for every unit of instruction. Next Gen Time helped us focus in on things like how do the curricular materials provided by the publisher support teachers in doing their best instruction? And, you know, if a teacher sits down with the giant binder, can they find what they need? All of those pieces. Are there ways to integrate ELA and math instruction that are so important in the elementary classroom? We can't do everything in tiny pockets. We don't have that much time. That beautiful integration that STEM is so good at. Were the curricular materials helping that happen, or was that something teachers had to figure out on their own? So then we set out to do our pilot starting in November of 2019, and it was supposed to run through April of 2020. So as we all remember the spring of 2020, we did have some interruptions to the last bits of our pilot. by the school closures, we missed the last 3 weeks of data collection, which meant most teachers taught all of their first unit and only a portion of their second unit. We collected all the data we possibly could, even if it was just, from one activity instead of a whole unit. The committee got together in June and we looked at how much data we had from the pilot. And at that point, the committee decided that there was enough data that we could confidently move forward without having to redo the whole pilot. In the fall, committee members got together in small groups, socially distant, far apart with their masks on, to look at the narrative pieces of data, the stuff that you just can't number crunch, that you need to read the handwritten notes that teachers made while they were teaching, so you could really get a picture of how were the curriculum materials used in the classroom and what was the impact on student learning. Had a big discussion and made our final decision to recommend STEM scopes for adoption for K-5 STEM. We are currently working on collecting community feedback. We put together a website since usually we would have all the materials out on tables at the ESC and invite families to come look at them. We can't do that now. We can't have paper things that everybody's touching and passing around for who knows where. So we've built a digital way for the community to give us their feedback. We have a website, we have a demo login so families can log into the curriculum and see all the curriculum pieces firsthand. They're also on that website are included some overview videos to help kind of explain what those pieces are, and some digital copies of some of the materials that are also in your board packet. I'm really excited. Thanks to Andrew in communications, we've gotten some great data on the usage of that site, and we've had over 150 unique views of those materials. And I think that's really exciting because really, if you think about how many people would have come to the ESC to actually look at the print materials, I don't think it would have been that many people. So I'm really excited about how much access we've given our community to give us feedback. That window is still open because we wanted to make sure we had it open for a good solid 2 weeks. So we haven't closed the opportunity for feedback. I wanted to share with you a little of what we've seen so far in the feedback that's actually come in. Oh man, I got ahead of myself. I'll get to data feedback in a minute. So things the committee is really the STEM Scopes curriculum was highly rated for: alignment to the standards, opportunities for integration with other subject areas, the equity and diversity in the curriculum itself. Big key with the support for differentiated instruction for diverse learners. That came up a lot in our narrative feedback from teachers and in our discussions as one of the things that really pushed STEM Scopes to the top of the list. Clear connections to home and real world learning, all of those anchoring phenomena are things that kids can see actually happening. The teacher materials are very well organized. It's clear where everything is. It's easy for a teacher to pull in what they need and what they use and integrate it into their instruction. Because it's supported on an online platform, it does make it more flexible and useful if we're stuck in remote learning ever again. Hopefully not, but it's good to be prepared. Their STEM Scopes provides ample professional learning support for teachers during implementation, and in my interactions with them so far, they've been very flexible and responsive in helping us put things together just for Peninsula School District. It's not just here's our dog and pony show. They're really interested in collaborating and making sure what they have to offer fits what we need. And the other big thing the committee really liked was in STEM Scopes, there were a lot of the really hands-on, build it, do it activities for students to really engage in STEM learning. Quick overview of our data. The EQUIP rubric is the standard score, how well a curriculum met the standard. And you can see in almost every category, STEM Scopes came out on top. The qualitative data, I'm not going to take time to dig through all of that tonight. There's a lot there. Please feel free to access that. And if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them either email or in December or anything like that. But the key pieces are kind of all the things I mentioned in that highly rated slide are all there in the narrative data as well. This is a screenshot of our website for community feedback that I already talked about, and you can get on there and dig into the curriculum if you like. Talked about the community feedback timeline already because I got ahead of myself. So overview of the community feedback so far. Lots of excitement about hands-on, about connections to real-world learning, about kids doing project-based learning. The only con that has come across my desk is that it's very online based, and once we're past having to do remote learning, we wouldn't want kids to be staring at the screen. And I can totally see how it might look like that when you're looking at it from an online perspective, but it is absolutely not intended for kids to be sitting at a computer and doing their science work. It is intended that they are doing the real live hands-on work in their classrooms with their teachers in that learning community. Implementation planning, I always like to look forward in an optimistic fashion. So assuming that we are approved, eventually we are working on putting together an implementation team. The goal is to have that team represent all grade levels and all buildings. And that team will be responsible for providing recommendations around how do we implement this well. We've learned from past adoption experiences that in a lot of ways, implementation is almost as important, if not more important, than the actual curriculum that you select. So what do teachers need to be able to do this well? Not just going to hand them a big bucket of supplies and say, see you later. Professional learning opportunities, both around how to use the specific curriculum and how to do three-dimensional learning well. That is still a shift that we are getting used to, especially for teachers who maybe have been relying more on their STEM specialists to do more of their science instruction, asking them to take more of the load of science. Our STEM specialists are amazing. They've been doing incredible work around science instruction, but it's not reasonable to expect someone to do all science instruction in only 40 minutes a week. Classroom teachers need to be involved, and we need to provide classroom teachers the support they need to do that well. STEM scopes as a curriculum and implementation professional learning is what teachers need to do that. We're also looking at, there's a variety of ways to take care of all that stuff you need to do science, and how do we get that out to teachers in a way that makes sense so they have what they need when they need it. We are planning a implementation view long-term, 3 to 5 years. How do we keep working on this and keep coming back to what are we doing well, what needs more support? What are we doing well, what needs more support? So that's our vision moving forward. Any questions?
I have one question, if I could go real quick. First of all, thank you. I really enjoyed that. It's just nice to see your enthusiasm for it. So thank you for all the work that you put into it.
Thank you.
My question, I have several, but I'm going to go with one for now. Just on this last slide you have here, just having some experience with this in another district, also trying to build a STEM program with that hands-on learning, which is what everyone wants. You mentioned here the need for a plan for sharing and maintaining supply kits and equipment. So is that something that we are working on? Because as you go through a program, you deplete, whether it's, you know, like you said, we need cotton balls or things for gathering. So who buys those? Does it come with the curriculum? And what is that plan? Basically, if you have one, for making sure that we
did not want to put the cart that far in front of the horse and make any presumptions that this was a done deal. So specifics of that plan are not developed yet. That would be one of the responsibilities of this implementation team, for DLI staff to sit down with teachers and talk through what do we need and where are we balancing the, you know, we only have so many dollars, but we do need so many cotton balls, as you say. So how do we build a structure that works for everybody in a responsible way?
Great. That sounds good. And space to put it all. It's a lot of stuff.
Yep, it's a lot of stuff. So how do we, yeah, how do we make sure there's space for it?
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else?
David has a question.
Sorry, I was on mute. David, go ahead.
Thanks. I was going to wait and see if Lori or someone else wanted to ask. Again, Ashley, thank you for putting this together. A couple questions. You mentioned how many teachers and specialists were involved on the committee. Why were no parents on the committee? Is that standard not to have parents on the initial committee?
That has not been standard practice in the Peninsula School District. I definitely agree. That would be an interesting piece to include in the future. I would welcome parent participation on our implementation team.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned the website, 150 unique views from the community members, but are you or Chris or someone able to track what type of community member is reviewing it? Because how would we know if it's an actual parent reviewing it versus a local business owner whose kid may not actually take the training? So that's amazing. And I have one follow-up to that. So how do you know who's viewing?
As I understand it, the analytics that we have access to are not that specific. It just tells us that it's a different user looking at it. So we know that there's that many unique views. It's not like I went in and looked at it 167 times. We know that it's that many unique computers going to look at it, but I don't think we have a way to track exactly who those people are unless they send me feedback and include their name in the feedback, which has not happened yet.
No, and just to piggyback on that as well, we have also, and this was in one of the slides as well, publicized this in different routes. So we provided blurbs that teachers could put into their parent newsletters. Schools could include that within their schools newsletters, and it also went out in one of our State of the District emails with invitation for folks to take a look at it. So we're continuing to try to use multiple different routes of communication to get more and more folks. But Ashley's right, the analytics just kind of tell us how many views of that website, but we don't have a way of tracking where those views are from.
Okay. I just think it'd be really important if some of them were from actual parents of the kids. And then can you go back to the slide that had the the percentages?
Okay,
the percentages?
Yep.
Sorry, I just took off screen or the share. You have to redo the share, sorry.
There we go. The percentages of
There were two of them.
The data?
Yeah, the data, yeah, stems,
Yeah, there we go.
overall, that one. So the overall pilot score, and again, this is just a question, an overall pilot score of 68. Maybe that's above average, but just looking at how that would be if it was my kid bringing home his math exam, I wouldn't be overly happy with a 68. How is that in the curriculum world looked upon with a 68 score?
Yeah, nobody gets 100%. There, you know, it's hard to say in the curriculum world what a perfect score would be because every district kind of uses their own lens to look at things based on what they believe the needs of their students are. So I would say the Amplifying STEM scopes are, out of the 5 we started with, they were significantly better than everything else we looked at, especially when it came to meeting the standards and that structure of 3-dimensional learning and using actual real world phenomena to base the learning around. And so, yeah, I can't tell you what like a perfect score would be, but nobody ever gets 100%.
We wouldn't expect 100%. And also that's why the implementation aspect is so important and is a multi-year aspect, is because Publishers are publishers, they're vendors. They're going to tell us that their curriculum is perfect, but we know the reality of being in the classrooms, working with our learners, and the unique students that you have in front of you this year compared to next year, you know, remote learning versus face-to-face learning. And so that is the importance of that implementation and that multi-year process of making you have that resource, and teachers now have a resource that they haven't had before. And now they get to dig into what this really looks like for the Peninsula School District.
Yeah, and to echo Natalie's statement about the implementation work, I feel like that's where we get our opportunity to turn that 68 into the 100% for Peninsula. That's where we get to put even more of our stamp on it and say, this is what our students need more of. This is what our students need less of. This is what our teachers need more support in or less support in, and really make it look what's best for our kids.
Thank you. David, anything else? Okay. Chuck, Lori? You're on mute, Lori.
Can you
Yep.
Yeah, that.
I know.
Ashley, you just answered essentially this question from David, but just to be a little more clear about parent involvement, because we've been getting asked this a lot, you know, about other topics. And is it typical for, I know you said not, you know, it hasn't been our practice in the past, but I don't ever recall as a parent being asked to weigh in on curriculum decisions. Is that something that goes on? I'm not talking about, you know, sex ed and some of those things, but I mean about typical science, reading, math curriculum. Is that something that actually goes on in other districts all of the time? Or could you just shed a little light on that?
As far as I understand it, Natalie, Melissa, please jump in and correct me. It is actually part of board policy that there is a parent review time period for any adopted curriculum. So any content area that's going through an adoption would have to provide this review period. And yeah, every district I know does that. As far as involving parents in like being on the selection committee, that varies district to district. I do know some districts that do it like you absolutely have to have X number of parents. I know other districts that will take parents when they can get them, but you don't have to have it. And you know, I just started in this role last year. So that point of putting the committee together and who was on the committee was right when I joined the team.
Okay.
Yeah, something else I'll add to that is with the parent commitment, typically in a typical year, these committee meetings are full day. All day, we pull teachers out for full day releases, and they, depending on the adoption and how quickly that happens, it could be a full day monthly, it could be a full day every other month. So that time commitment is typically a strain on parents. I think these opportunities change and this process evolves as these adoption committees continue. We aren't pulling teachers for full day subs right now. We are compacting that and doing smaller, shorter meetings. So, you know, we have other adoptions that are just on the starting point in some of these. And if parents are interested in being involved in that process, we'd welcome it. I think implementation is even that much more important as we talk about what this instruction actually looks like in the Peninsula School District. And of course, that parent feedback throughout this process of, you know, between the recommendation from the committee and IAC to final board approval, that's where we really would encourage folks to take a look and provide any feedback through the linked Google form on the website as much as possible.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, because I think it's really important for people to know what our practice has been and what other districts typically do, you know, to gauge where we're at. But thank you, Ashley. The presentation was great, and I enjoyed looking through the materials that we were sent ahead of time. So.
Yeah, if you looking forward to coming back in December. If any questions come up, please don't hesitate to contact me.
Okay, I would like to go back to the 4th grade. Actually, it looks
right. Some of it looks really fun.
fun.
Yeah. Chuck, do you have any questions?
No, I was looking it over. Just a comment. It looks great. I don't really have anything to compare it to, so I didn't look at the other curriculum. But yeah, and I'm online, so I went and looked at the online version of it also. And yeah, it looks easy to use, and yeah.
Thanks, Chuck. So yeah, I really appreciate the process you guys are using. You know, as a reminder, we just talked about it. We do have a parent usually on our IAC, and I know you probably sought one out. But I'm glad they're at least looking at the curriculum and able to give feedback, and we're getting a lot of participation in that. I think it's important. My questions we adopted a middle school curriculum, and it probably was years ago, but it seemed like yesterday. Did we look at that curriculum in terms of, are we feeding into that curriculum with STEM scopes? Like, is this a good program to feed into that? Okay.
Yeah, and I think the real strength with that is the strength of the three-dimensional instruction that when I talk to the middle school teachers about what do you feel like your kids don't have when they come in sixth grade, it's that three-dimensional instruction experience. That have they had an opportunity to build a claim and support that claim with evidence? Have they have an opportunity to design an investigation to test an idea they have? Do they understand those processes of doing science so that they can really dive deeper into the content when they get to middle school?
Okay.
And so with how strongly STEM Scopes addresses three-dimensional learning, I'm really confident that our kids will be well prepared to transition to middle school.
Ashley, thank you. And that actually makes me feel really good, because I know I had that same question with middle school up to high school, and you guys asked those same questions there. So now I feel like we have a cohesive, or will have a cohesive STEM program or throughout our K through 12 program. You did mention the remote accessibility, and while we are teaching both in person and remote right now, I want to make sure this program is fair access and strong access for both groups of kids, because we want those experiences to be very similar. So you think that this can scale to that?
Absolutely. One of the pros that quite a few of our piloting teachers pointed out is that while materials you could run it so the kid is typing their answer into the computer and submitting it electronically, right? Everything is available to teachers as a Google Doc download that they can customize. If they need to make print copies for kids who need print copies, it's all available to do either way. The flexibility in instruction methodology for teachers was one of the key pros for our piloting teachers. They really felt like they had the tools they needed to customize the instruction to their students and their situation. And some of the other curriculum we looked at was not quite so flexible.
Okay, thanks for considering that. Two more things. One, I really appreciate the teacher involvement in this, and especially the implementation process, because as you've heard earlier tonight and we've experienced, our teachers are maxed out. So putting on a new curriculum may be overwhelming, but if they can be a part of that process to build that, that's going to help. And we can gauge, where are we in the fall of 2021, and how much of that 3 to 5 year implementation plan can be taken care of. So I really appreciate that consideration. So thank you. And lastly, what did the kids think? Like I had middle schoolers when you guys did the middle school adoption. So I had my kids come home and they were quite blunt with their feedback on the curriculum pilot.
They are.
What did the kids think?
So I don't have exact kids quotes prepared for you, but I will bring you some in December.
Okay.
But the feedback from the kids was really positive. One of the projects that sticks out in my mind is fourth graders working on how animals get what they need from their environment, and building these models of an environment. And then I got to be in the classroom when they presented their final models before the closure, and just listening to them and how in depth they could dig into the interactions that were happening in the ecosystem. It was really exciting, and they were so engaged, and everybody's listening to everybody else's presentation. So just the whole wraparound of involving, not just, do I know some science facts? Can I talk about the connections? Can I give a presentation to my peers? All of those pieces were connected together. It was really exciting.
Good. Well, I look forward to those comments because they're fun to hear. And one more question, sorry. This is the curriculum that will be taught at all 9 elementary schools, correct? I mean, it will be across the district that we're, okay, thank you. Any other questions? Ashley,
Deb,
Natalie?
I would just add one more thing, Deb, real quick.
Yeah.
In response to one of your questions, the amount that STEMscopes is doing STEMscopes know the majority of teachers are working in remote learning and doing curriculum in their remote learning. And so the continued professional development and updates that they're doing on the curriculum based on that reality has been really impressive. So as Ashley and I have been watching different science curriculums, and as you know, from March to today, going through these processes, we have both been really impressed by how much effort STEMscopes is making to make this doable in the reality that most of our teachers are faced in. So rest assured with that one too.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just don't want to get to a situation where it's really cool to be in school to do it while there's some kids out. And I want that experience to be similar for both. So thank you very much.
Deb, I'd like to follow up on your comment about thanking the teachers, and certainly do. It was an incredible ask of them to take all the time that went in, and the thinking and the conversations. And I was just really, really impressed with the discourse of our teachers. And when we got to the piloting, it wasn't just the team, the committee. There were teachers who were not on the committee who said, hey, we'd like to take this on. And I think there was a whole kindergarten team that said, you know what, we need to take a really good look and see how this is going to fit in the work that we have in front of us. So kudos to our teachers, all of them who worked with a pilot and did the extra work and the extra hours for us.
Thanks, Melissa. And that doesn't surprise me. They're awesome. Okay, thank you. Okay, Chris and Chris?
Yep, I'm gonna start and Melissa can add on at the end, but we do apologize, our report's gonna be a little long today, but we wanted to take this opportunity to, we spent a lot of time so far this year reporting on all of the unfortunate things that are happening due to COVID and the lost experiences. And we wanted to take the other half of our report tonight to share celebrations of what are happening in the schools, some of the great experiences that kids are getting through this time. And so late last week, I reached out and was actually overwhelmed with the amount of things that I was sent back from teachers. Way more than I'll even have the ability to share with you tonight, but we are going to share them with Amy, and hopefully she'll be getting them out on social media. But I have a few examples tonight that I wanted to go through with all of you and share just some of the things that are happening, the positive things that are happening with remote learning this year. So with that. Okay, so just wanted to show, because I know a couple of you are parents and so you see this, but you know, some of you may not have kids in school, and so you're not knowing exactly what is remote learning looking like right now for our students, and how our teachers re-envisioning what that looks like. As unappealing as this is a very well organized classroom for a digital classroom for kids. You know, the teachers have done an amazing job of just picking up and acquiring the skills necessary to get this information out to students. You can see kids know exactly where they need to go every week to get their assignments. The teachers are just doing an amazing job. As many of them said, it's a lot of work, and I'm going to show you a few more things here, and you'll see why that teachers are spending twice as much time as they normally would on remote learning right now. I don't have time to show you these videos, but these are a couple of science teachers from Kopachuk doing amazing videos demonstrating science phenomenon, science experiments in their backyards or in their shop or, you know, around their house to make sure that these kids are still getting the learning that they need. So kudos to them on that. Teachers are spending a lot of time building these virtual Bitmoji classrooms, as they're called. And so this is another middle school teacher, and the kids come into her little classroom or her relaxation room if they just need to rest, and she has some activities that can help them with breathing or relaxation throughout the day, and so they have that as well. Students are figuring out how to show their learning. So this is a middle school student in health class who, unfortunately, this is a video, so I just took a picture of it, but she's demonstrating CPR on her dummy. So she took her and she goes through the whole process of checking for breathing and, you know, following the steps moving through CPR. So she's doing a great job as an example of showing how she's learning in health class her CPR. Here's an elementary classroom where the teacher was young kids, teachers reading of the book Pop, the Invention of Bubble Gum. And so you could see in the upper left picture, the teacher's reading on the screen. She's got another screen up showing how the kids are reacting. And then after the book is over, they all kind of go through the activity of blowing bubbles and popping their own bubble gum. So keeping the kids engaged so that lecture time on Zoom is not just, you know, somebody talking to them, but they actually get to have a little bit of fun that goes with it. Virtual field trips. A lot of our schools right now are starting to do Pacific Science Center virtual field trips. So the Pacific Science Center is adapted just like everybody else. So these kids are still getting their Science Center field trip experiences while virtually. So that's happening. Here's another one that's happening in one of the schools. The students, this is an elementary school. The students started interest-based clubs. And so they post discussions about shared interests. For example, one student's making weekly instructional videos on how to knit. And then they post links. Another one did Halloween drawing tutorials. They advertise their clubs in class during their morning meetings. And then the kids can just go to these folders in Schoology and watch their videos that they've made about their interests. Just like we would in a normal classroom, this on the bottom right corner, they're doing a social studies unit on community values and the Constitution, and the kids wrote their own preamble for class. And every day they say, after the Pledge of Allegiance, they sing their class anthem. So they're kind of learning those civics and social studies in elementary school. Here's a high school teacher, biomedical innovations, that she sent home fake blood so that the kids could still do their blood spatter analysis. And it's an example of that. She also does these little, she calls them love lights, but it's motivating the kids every time that they're doing something, you know, they're in the cameras doing things well. She uses these to motivate discussion, kindness, hard work. Every time when their jar fills up, they get rewards for off-camera time or music during class or assignment passes and that kind of thing. So, you know, teachers are figuring out some of these things that they've done physically, they're doing virtually now. Or, you know, in this teacher's example is a high school teacher. She just keeps these on the desk behind her, and when the kids are behaving well in the virtual class, she adds to the palms to the jars. Again, social emotional learning is still a big thing. Entry tasks every day when they join their Zoom. What are their goal for the day, their positive thoughts? And on the right here is a treasure map of assignments for kindergarten and first grade kids. So easy for them to follow along to make it through their week. One teacher has created virtual bookshelves so that anytime the kids want a book to listen to or a book to read, they can just go to the virtual bookshelves. She's doing them throughout the seasons on different seasons. You can see these are Halloween and Frankenstein. So they're building reading opportunities for kids. The kids are really loving it, having the ability. High schools here, you know, they're trying to create some of the same familiarity and consistency in remote. They have daily video announcements, other written announcements that they're getting on a daily basis. Here's some things that I found really interesting when they're coming back. Some of the experiential learning, hands-on experiences that kids are getting exposed to right now during remote learning. So there's a middle school class where kids are doing a recycled engineering design process or project, and they're building engineering projects out of things laying around their house. So you can see somebody built a windmill, a RoboCop, a Minecraft axe, a miniature farm, and a catapult and a foosball table. So they're just utilizing the things that are around the house to help this learning process happen. Kids are in this process, in the remote learning, kids are having time to build passion projects. So this is a fifth grader from Purdy who has a passion for engines. And so she did a passion project on different car engines and then built herself a full-scale model of a car engine that works. And so some of these things that we don't always have time to do, teachers are finding ways for kids to to build these things that they're passionate about and stay involved and stay engaged. Here's another one that I really liked. This is Discovery, I believe, and they're doing outdoor live learning in our vivid environment. And so the teacher is assigning this week's a challenge to explore, if you can't read it, in your backyard or your neighborhood, or driving around in a car, try and identify a Western cedar tree. And then if you're out and about, you pick up pine cones, and then they do an activity with pine cones later in the week. So trying to do hands-on learning and everything not being in front of a computer while still being in remote learning. We're seeing a lot of things to help students stay motivated and stay engaged. Here's an elementary classroom on Olson's Day. I think this is a Minter class, right around Halloween, showing off all of their pumpkins and Halloween decorations, to just some of these things that keep kids engaged and keep them happy. Look how happy all these kids are. I'm sure they'd be happier in class, but they're really doing well here. Purdy Elementary, all of the teachers recorded positive encouragement messages for all of the kids. I think if I remember correctly here. So they recorded messages and sent these home. They've had over 860 views. So most of the families are watching this or watching them multiple times. They also do a remote learner of the week. And so those kids are honored over the announcements that they do virtually every day. Here's another one that they're doing some emotional well-being work. This classroom had Stuffy Day, where every kid got to bring their stuffy, and the stuffy sat with them throughout the whole class. Dance parties at Minter, they have dance parties every Friday, so that the kids can just kind of blow off some steam. And then the teacher, and one of these teachers that sent me some information, said that she just needed to make some better connections sometimes with kids, and so she'll just sit down and have little small group lunches, and so you can see them just sitting around and all sharing their lunch together to help build those relationships in the classroom. Peninsula High School is realizing that some things kids are having a little bit of trouble with, so they've been able to kind of take a step back and had a full focus on organizational tools and assignment skills and that kind of thing, motivation. So they've done some really nice work building out tools like an assignment tracker that the kids can use to keep track of their assignments, make sure they stay on track in all their classes. And then I have a couple of things to finish up. This is from a 4th grade classroom at Vaughn. And so the teacher asked the kids what are some of their things that they've really enjoyed about remote learning. Seeing wild animals in our backyard. Are they always coming around while we're in school? Was a question. Reading, and more reading under cozy blankets. Creating slideshows like this one to show what we know. Getting to know each other through discussions, Padlets, Flipgrids, and Zoom. Teamwork on Zoom, and I'll share that story with you in a second on the next slide. Overall, remote learning is pretty good in his opinion, down there in the bottom right. Oops. This student said, remote learning may be the best school-related thing that ever happened to me. I feel like I can get things done better because my cat Beatrice is nice to be around. Most of the time, she's jumped on my monitor and keyboard and took off 2 keys, but it's better now. I get to use blankets, read longer, and spend more time with my family, and a lot more. And then I have a quote here that I wanted to read from the teacher that sent this in. She mentioned that when she conferenced with parents in October, she heard over and over how much parents appreciate the opportunity for kids to learn online, and how they've been so impressed with how well it's working and how much their kids are learning. It's not a perfect system, but parents are impressed and thankful for a safe way to learn. One of the most beautiful examples of community in her remote learning 4th grade class happens when a student or the teacher gets glitchy or frozen in Zoom. It inevitably happens more often for some students. The students have learned to all turn off their own cameras and mute themselves, which allows the person that's having problems to do a better job on Zoom. This usually gives the speaker just enough bandwidth for us to be able to understand them. Once they finish, everyone turns their cameras back on. They want to hear each other's voices and thoughts. I know this sounds like a simple thing, but these are 9 and 10-year-olds who have figured out how to make this system work and willing to put someone else's needs before their own. They work as a team without any directions from adults, and it's beautiful. And then the last one is a letter. When I reached out, I got a letter from a grandparent, and she wanted to share this perspective, and this will be the last I have here. And that was, I understand there's been some question about the effectiveness of online schooling. I'm a grandmother who's had to step in to help. I hear there are other grandparents stepping in as well. That in itself is a positive situation, but let me share with you what I see. My 3rd and 5th grade grandkids have learned an incredible amount since school started this year. By now, they all know their multiple facts, have learned to type around 20 to 40 words per minute, and have written several personal narratives with excellent descriptive terms and grammar. They are using the treadmill for PE. The 3rd grader has me video record her reading to make sure that the expression is good. The 5th grader opened his math lesson Thursday to find long multiplication and story problems. He said, "Oh, good, I'm really good at this." And he is. I understand there are some feeling behind, but that happens in regular classrooms as well. I hope you can see that the district has good online curriculum and excellent dedicated teachers. This program is working well. And so I just wanted to end with that. Like I said, I got a ton more, but wanted to keep this somewhat reasonable. I probably could have shared examples for the next half hour or so, but just really wanted to honor the work that teachers are doing and have been doing this year and share some of the great things that are happening even in this remote learning environment. So with that, that concludes our DLI report. Unless Melissa had anything else.
Chris, thank you very much for sharing all of that. That was incredibly encouraging. Great to see. Completely creates the picture of why our teachers are working 12 hours a day to make that happen. So, wow. And thanks to the parents and grandparents. Any questions or comments for Chris or Melissa? Lori?
Just a comment. Thank you so much for that. It just it was so awesome to see. We know there's success stories. We all know students that are thriving and teachers that are being, well, we all know teachers are working incredibly hard and of course, but on top of that, that are actually just being clever and, you know, coming up with just different things. And I think it's just as board members, we tend to get a lot of, we don't hear a lot of these stories sometimes. And so this was just super cool. I thank you very much for the presentation. So I actually spent today with a teacher who had been a long-term sub, so not working any longer, but in the district at the high school. And just so I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is for the online teachers. And so I just appreciate it. And it's cool for everyone, I think, to see the success stories. So thanks for taking the time to do that.
Yep.
Thanks, Lori. Any other questions or comments? Natalie?
Just a thank you, ditto that. I mean, it's nice to see. And like Lori said, we don't always get that part. And what we do get is important and equally valuable. But I just love to see those smiles and just a confirmation of how hard everyone's working. And Chris, you made a comment and I wrote it down because I loved it, but I love to hear these kids, and we all are learning to put someone else's needs before our own. And I just think that's something that as a world we're learning to do. And it is no surprise that our kids are the ones leading us in that effort. So thanks.
Thanks, Natalie. Okay. Melissa, Chris, thank you very much. We are moving on to our assistant superintendents, Mr. Dan Gregory and Mr. John Helwick are here. There we are. Hi.
Hello. Hello. Thank you. I'll go ahead and kick us off with some more successes and start with, we're going to work our way through the grades and where we're at in planning for in-person learning, and starting with K1, where we've been able to experience success in-person learning for 7 weeks. After tomorrow, it will have been 7 weeks that those that have chosen in-person learning have been on campus, and those that did not are been learning in the remote school. As Dr. Jarvis said in his open remarks, everyone's really adjusted well to all the mitigating factors that they had to go through to be on campus. The face coverings, the hallway markings, the health checks, all of those different things that we thought would make school a really difficult place. Kids have adjusted. Kids are really flexible. Staff have been great with them. And, you know, I think most of the staff that I've talked to, they feel like, oh, that's just how we do school now. We don't really even think about it. It isn't disruptive at all. Um, and again, giving credit to the staff that the work that they did with them right early on when they first came on campus on September 28th has really paid off as they kind of worked with kids on how to adapt to all that. Student learning's going well too in our assessments from iReady and Dibbles, seeing pretty typical progress. So the achievement is what we'd expect it to be. Obviously, we have some students doing well and some students struggling that need additional support, but in general, we feel like the student learning is going well. Say the same about the behavior. In fact, in general, you've heard us talk in recent years about some of maybe a rising number of students who struggle with executive functioning as they start to transition into school and have some behavior outbursts. And those we've seen less of this year than typical. And we wondered if with all the trauma going on in a pandemic that we might see more, but so far that hasn't been the case. And we'll continue to kind of track that and come up with more hard data than just saying it seems that way. But right now I'd say there's some good indications. We also heard Board President Kristen Dawson mention in her opening remarks that we have had no COVID-19 cases for any K-1 students or staff in those cohorts. And I think that's a great celebration as well. So now Dan's going to talk about the remote update for K-1.
Yes, thank you, John. And just have to comment, Melissa and Chris, they're a tough act to follow tonight. So we'll do our best to do well and be succinct also. As you know, and I think you've heard, our remote class sizes in K and especially in first grade are rather large. We're in the middle of working through a plan to add a section of first grade to help lower the first grade numbers. Those are the numbers that are the largest. So we've identified some staff and identified some opportunities where we might be able to make that shift. What I would say is, remember, if we add a section, that would be a change for some of the students and families in the remote sections, but it's also a change for the other impacted schools. We're not in a position to go out and hire a new person. And so we've looked for opportunities to be able to condense sections. And as we think about that happening, we want to consider not only the students who are in the remote and their families, but also the impacted schools and how we make that work. Another area that we needed to provide a more robust opportunity in was around the area of specialists. And I am happy to tell you, as of today, we've added 2 other specialists to our remote learning group. We've added a partial STEM specialist and a partial art specialist. So all of our remote students will have a synchronous face-to-screen interaction at least once a week with a music specialist, with a STEM specialist, and with an art specialist. So we're happy we were able to do that. And we did that in a manner where when we do bring second grade on, those specialists will be able to serve K through 2, not just K through 1. We had that all prepared to go today when we were going to roll second grade in today. And even though we bumped back the second grade to November 30th, we did go ahead with the specialist plan and staff that appropriately starting today. Again, that was an impact, a positive impact to our remote learners. But again, we didn't hire new folks for those. And so we had other buildings that we had to look at, review, and analyze the specialist allocations and make adjustments to them as well. But we all worked, we made it work out, and everybody pulled together as a team to make that happen. So we have a plan to create a new first grade section, and we've already implemented a plan to make the specialist piece of the remote learning more robust. John's going to talk a little bit now about the advisory work that we've been doing as we've been preparing for the return of students in grades 3 through 5, and then I'll circle back and talk about 6 through 12.
Yeah, so as we look forward, we don't have dates set for the return of students in grades 3 through 12, but one thing that we learned in our early experiences with K-1 is that we really want to do a lot of pre-planning so that, and we know better now what to anticipate that we're planning for. So we have created these advisory groups along with PEA to make sure that we get stakeholder voice involved and work through the process. And whenever it does come that we can bring these students on campus, we'll be ready and it'll be a smooth transition. So there are representatives from the different grade levels and different specialist areas. on this committee, and we've met 3 times. The first time we met as a 3 through 12 group to talk about hybrid plans more broadly. And then the last 2 meetings have just been with the 3rd through 5th grade group. Because it may be that the model that we use for 3rd through 5th might be different than what we use for the secondaries. It might be the same, but we want to explore the possibilities that it may work differently better for the 3 through 5 group. So we've looked at other school districts, what plans, some of them have implemented them. A lot of them are just like we are, they're just in the planning phase. And we've solicited ideas from staff and tried to come up with some good options. We've narrowed those, and we're going to be taking those next back out to the schools for all of our educators to have input on those plans and work through some of the logistical issues that will have to be solved if we're able to implement these, and then bring those back and make some decisions, and then bring that recommendation to you. But we want to be able to do that over the next few weeks, so that whenever it is that we're able to bring back the 3 through 5s, that we'll have a good plan in place. So some of the types of things that we'll have to work through, you've heard Dan talk about the specialists from K1. So we'll have to look and see, what does that look like for 3rd through 5th? We're going to have these kind of 2 different models going on in the schools. We'll have K through 2 going 4 days a week, and then we'll have 3 through 5 where the classes in some way will be split and attending partially in person and partially at home. So we'll kind of have this primary and intermediate will be on a little bit different tracks, and that's going to impact all staff in trying to make those work. So again, it's all about trying to get ahead of it, pre-plan, get everybody's voice into it, and then we'll bring you something soon.
Thank you,
Dan's
John.
going to talk to you about 6 through 12.
Yeah, thank you, John. When we talk about 6 through 12, our most recent meeting was on November 4th. As John mentioned, we met as a 3 through 12 group initially, and then we broke apart into the 3 through 5, and then the secondary group as a whole. I would just like to highlight that we added members going into that second meeting. So the group that's looking at the hybrid for secondary 6 through 12 is now 20 members strong. That includes representatives from the buildings in elective courses, as well as core courses, and also from special education. So we've tried to create a very broad spectrum of stakeholders as we're working with that group. There was a goal of surveying parents in December on the preference of in-person versus remote learning. There's a bit of a sense of urgency around that, because we will have to have time to consider how to staff and what staffing adjustments will be needed. There was some thinking that would be more difficult at elementary than it would be at secondary. But when we start to consider the singleton courses at the secondary, those that have only one section running, it becomes more complex. As it becomes more complex when you have teacher certification that's involved as well. So when you think about AP courses, if you have AP courses and some of those students choose in-person and others choose remote, how do you make sure that both have a very quality AP course experience? And that doesn't just hold true for AP courses, it's for all of those singleton courses and specialized certifications. Before surveying parents, however, we need to determine what that in-person opportunity looks like. We can't very well ask parents about committing to a specific product until we've defined what that product looks like. So we're really working hard at that. At this last meeting, we broke into different subgroups, and each of those subgroups reviewed 6 different models, 6 different options for what hybrid might look like. And the purpose of that was not to narrow it down and select one. It was really to see which preferences elevated and rose to the top. And we were successful in that. We did identify some preferences, and what I would also say is we identified some non-preferences, which means we have some things that we won't pursue further. Some of those, to the group's credit, was how do we see students frequently? Some of the hybrid models would have significant gaps between when you get to see your students. So they want to see students frequently. One of the things that's kind of a sub bullet to that is how we might use Wednesday as a touch point for all students. We don't know what that looks like yet, but how do we embed the opportunity to have a touch point with students every Wednesday? Some of the non-preferences were avoiding class periods of excessive length. We did look at some block schedule models similar to what the students are doing in remote now versus some kind of standard 6-period models. And so we're still weighing the pros and cons of those as we weigh instructional impacts against also safety and transmission opportunities. So we'll continue to work through those. One other thing that we'll continue to work through is the use of the flex time at the middle schools and the homeroom time at the high schools. What's the purpose of that time? How does that purpose evolve as we look at shifting from remote to in-person? And whatever that purpose is also has an impact on the frequency of when we would like to hold those flex periods in homeroom models. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. Again, we're weighing the pros and cons. We'll do that at our next meeting, again, with a focus on instructional models. And I should mention the instructional in-day model will also be dependent upon what we plan for the away from school day. So what are the teacher and student expectations when students aren't at school for that day? So there's a lot to work through there. We're going to work through that and then also push that information out and find a way to gather input from the staff in the buildings that will come back to this advisory group as we work to make a decision. That is all we have for you on those 2 items right now. Again, we wanted to kind of be succinct, but get to some of the points on that, but we are available for questions on those.
Thanks. Thanks, Dan and John. Questions from anyone or comments?
Maybe more of a comment, or maybe it's a question. Are we looking at other school districts that are already ahead of us, other areas? And I say that I have a daughter in England, so I'm looking at the UK and how they're opening schools over there, and I'm hearing a little bit back from her. So we're not inventing the wheel. There's got to be other people out there that we might be working with that are also in the same boat.
John,
Yes,
if you want to comment, if you want to comment that at the elementary level, I can provide some examples of the secondary level as well.
Yeah, I would say probably the same as Dan's going to say, but one I'll say that's unique to 3rd through 5th is I think it probably would not work to do an AM/PM model at the secondary level where you had students attending 4 days a week, half the group in the morning, half in the afternoon with a break in the middle. But we are seeing some neighbor districts looking at that option for intermediate elementary. And so the answer is, yeah, we are looking both locally and nationally and globally at what's working and what isn't, and trying to figure out. And it might work for one level and not for another.
Yeah, I would just add that I didn't know that we'd gone as far as England, Chuck. So that's an interesting perspective there. But yes, we did look at some examples. We actually started with some of the work that our principals did this summer when they were working on a model. So that has come into play. All that planning that they did in the summer hasn't gone to waste. But we also looked at other districts around us and looked for what we liked and what we didn't like. There was actually one model that off of the AB schedule ran all 6 of their periods for shorter time lengths. And we looked at that and at the initial meeting, we liked it. And the more we dug into that, kind of like the Wednesday example I was giving, the more we dug into that, it wasn't a favorite because it just seemed like the quality of time was not good. It was a rapid, frenetic pace. And to be able to have time to connect with and really dig into things was something that we wanted. And so we've looked for things that we like, but also things that we don't like through that process.
Thanks, Chuck. Anyone else? Quick question from me then. You mentioned, Dan, a survey in December for our 6 through 12. Understand you have to have that information in order to build a plan, and understand that you need to have a plan in order to get the survey. So it's a difficult situation. But my question is, in December, when you ask, is it a commitment to go remote or in person, or is it a interest? Because we won't know what the health situation is looking at like at that time. And are we like, what's the plan on that? And
Deb, what I would tell you is the initial plan was for a commitment, but I think we know with the dynamic nature of the way things are moving and shifting, that to commit to something a full month ahead of time might not be realistic. But it would give us an opportunity to do some planning, especially around some of those singleton courses and those courses that needs specific certification. So we hadn't really got into whether it was going to be a full commitment. We're thinking those numbers would help us do some initial planning, but obviously we might see some changes over the break and need to go back and have people commit on a shorter time frame. But some initial data would at least give us a good opportunity to start seeing what the staffing would be.
Well, I've definitely heard a common theme tonight that that you're reaching out to each of the buildings and multidisciplinaries in those buildings. So greatly appreciate that. All right, Mr. Hook, Mr. Gregory, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now are looking for Mr. Filkins and Mr. Werner for our athletics department. Lots of questions that we get on this, so we look forward to the information. Thanks for hanging with us.
We're here for you, so we're excited to see you all and talk about some of the interesting and fun things that we've been working on in athletics. And as you can imagine, there's been a lot of changes, and but we're appreciative of the support and the cooperation that we're getting with our colleagues. And so there's actually quite a bit to share. We're going to be respectful of everybody's time and follow up with some Q&A if there's gaps here. But we'll Bob Werner and I will open up with just a little bit of an update on what we're doing at the building level, and then just spend a little bit of time talking about some of the problem solving and interesting things that are happening locally with our district, and then also at the state level. So regarding Peninsula High School, we are currently in what's called an open coaching window, okay? And so sometimes this is referred to as summer 2.0. So if you recall, before 2020 and all this, that in the summertime, kids had the flexibility to work with programs throughout, particularly June and July. And so what has happened as a result of some of the pause on our athletics is that period of time has been extended through late December. Now, the timeline could change on us a little bit. We'll have to be ready for that. But we are becoming accustomed to being on our toes. And so that won't be a problem. But right now it's been going great. Okay, so at Peninsula High School and Gig Harbor High School, what we're doing with all of our student athletes is they have the opportunity to opt into these programs. These are completely optional. But if they're deciding to participate, we are having them with their parents go through on Family ID, our registration process, and then also verifying that they have a current physical on file. So we have a full background on all of our participants. We at Peninsula have 359 student athletes that are currently choosing to participate across 17 of our programs. And it's really phenomenal. On the average, our programs are going about twice a week for an hour. We don't want to overburden them. We know this is a challenging time. We want to make sure that they have their feet underneath them in terms of their academic stability. And we also know that a number of our students are multi-sport athletes. And so by keeping it down to just a couple days a week, they can get to 2 or sometimes even 3 different programs within a week. All of our safety protocols are being followed really well. Students wearing masks to and from, hand washing, sanitizing stations. We're doing the daily attestation forms, temperature checks, et cetera. They're doing a pretty good job. They're really excited to see each other. All right. So sometimes they have to be reminded to distance, particularly in the transitions in and out. But it's readily apparent that they love to see each other, and they're yearning for the connection and the physical activity now more than ever. And so it has been just tremendously successful. And I really can't say enough about our coaching staffs. We have about 50 coaches that are giving their time right now, and hearing great positive things from them just about every time they get out there. So again, it's going great. We haven't had, this has been phenomenal. We've been working with ADs all across the state. And one of the common questions that we get is, are you hearing any negative feedback, from people? And no, the answer is just absolutely not. We're getting nothing but positive feedback. And so it's just been, again, it's just been a phenomenal opportunity to get out there and see those kids and having some fun. So turn it back over to Bob here.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend quite as much time because it's ditto with what Ross just said. Over at Gig Harbor, we have over 300 kids. We have 14 programs presently active. It's voluntary. We go twice a week if the kids want to do it. And we do stress attendance because we understand, I've stressed that there is no required attendance. We understand some of these kids, they feel obligated to come to a practice. They're used to that with sports, that if you don't show up at practice, you miss play time, things like that. So we've had to go out of our way to make sure these kids know this is absolutely voluntary. If they're not feeling well, do not show up, please, 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 when they go through that process. So, but yeah, the same thing that Ross is saying on that. We have just over 40 coaches presently involved at Gig Harbor High School with the Summer 2.0 program. Also, just an update, we're in a league that's called the South Sound Conference. There are 8 other schools in our conference. We're one of the few conferences that actually has every school participating in this program right now. So all 8 schools are doing something very, very similar to what we're doing here. And they're in 3 different counties, from Thurston County to Kitsap County to Pierce County, and 5 different school districts. So things are kind of clicking in our conference right now as you do that. I want to explain just briefly so you understand our parameters. It's pretty well documented, 40-page return to play state of Washington document that we are utilizing. We have not made this up individual school districts. We actually have a governing document for the state of Washington that was updated on October 8th. And what that does is it divides all of our 24 sports that we have in our district. It assigns a risk factor. So of course, in our county right now, we're in the high risk based on the health department decision tree. But then we have 3 different risk factors. Certain sports are high risk sports. That would be like football, wrestling, water polo is classified as a high risk sport, and a handful of others. There's moderate risk sports and there's low risk sports. So depending on where you're at within your community rates, so being in Pierce County at high risk right now, as well as many counties across our state, you can still do some stuff fairly extensively with low risk sports, cross country, swimming, some of those, they are actually allowed to compete based on the health department's mandate right now. So the problem is we're not there at school districts yet to field enough teams and to have enough other schools to actually compete. And we're not yet in the WIAA season for competition, which is going to start up here at the end of December, possibly. But I just want to make sure everybody understood there's a matrix here. Is we have risk levels of every single sport. We have risk levels of every single county. And then that really dictates what we are allowed to do, both in practice as well as in competitions as that season rolls around. I'm going to turn it back over to Ross. He's going to cover a little bit on the WIA decision process, because as I mentioned, December 28th is supposed to be our next season starting, and it looking very, very certain that is not going to happen as planned. But there's some key dates coming up here that's going to tell us, and some options that are on the table Ross will kind of walk you through what we're going to have up in front of us here, and hopefully we'll have some information as soon as next week.
And as we get closer to December 28th, with what we initially projected as the start of what we called season 2, which would have been the typical winter sports, WIA, Mick Hoffman, they've done a phenomenal job of having their eyes wide open and taking in information across the country. So there's 39 states that are currently participating in athletics across the country. So we have a tremendous amount of data. And then that data is being shared with the Department of Health and the governor's office on a regular basis. And so we're in a window right now over the next couple of weeks where some of the national research and then some of the new updated recommendations from the SMAC committees, the medical advisory committees, is going to be coming in. And so what's happening right now is there are going to be 3 or 4 different possible models of what our seasons could look like. And WIA will be meeting on Monday and Tuesday, and then they'll be coming out with some initial word on the 17th. And then next Thursday, the 19th, is the actual drop dead to make a decision on what that next season and subsequent seasons is going to look like. And so there's 3 or 4 different variations. One of them is a 3 typical season, kind of a normal, transition through what would be actually be winter, followed by fall sports, and then following spring, and they're at least close to their normal timeline. But 2 of the other variations that are coming up right now due to some of the concerns about the rising COVID numbers are actually to move to a 2-season schedule, where we could potentially move back now, push back the start of competitions until March, and then separate things into 2 seasons. And so the thinking is if you do that, do you have your low risk sports start right away, and then followed by your moderate and higher risks? Or do you actually try to have in historical seasons so that kids are not having to choose as much? And so all those factors are being weighed right now. And like I say, we should get some word out here by as early as Tuesday on the direction that we're going to be going. But some things to be aware of in that process. There won't be state championships as we've had in the past. Even in the best case scenario, that those culminating events might be regionalized. And so something that it has come up from students, from parents, from other athletic directors across the country is the importance of not making your culminating event the driver on the decision. A lot of our kids, they want to be out there together. They want to compete. But the idea of getting out and winning a state championship is the least of their concerns at this point. So we're going to work to just keep finding a way to create safe opportunities for our participants to engage. So in that, and as Bob was just saying, we're going to work with our local school districts once we get to that point about competitions and how we can create those opportunities. Another update, something that has come up, and we talked about this, if you recall last year, was the emergence of esports. And so we talked about how there's a lot of traction, and I tell you what, the time is now, okay? And so I know that most of us, if not all of us, have been contacted by vendors that are offering their opportunity and platforms for esports. And so we're excited for the opportunity, and we see the need. We know that many of those students are not currently engaged in some of our other athletics and activities. And so we have an opportunity here, and but we also have some caution. So we need to proceed slowly. WIA is actually going to take the lead because we need to have a common platform. There's also some concerns that are emerging from some of these esport vendors. Some are trying to get you on a long-term contract. Some are not ensuring that they don't control all the advertising. We want to be careful about the programs, okay, that our kids are getting into. We do not want to have any, for instance, any first shooter type programs. And so there are some concerns. We're going to be, again, following the lead of WIA, and they are going to help us by negotiating a more unified price. And so we can get a little better price for that service as a state than we can on our own. And that decision is actually coming pretty fast. They got it down to 3 vendors just a couple weeks ago. They're really down to talking just about 2 at this point. And final decision will be due in January, and we should look to going live this spring. So we are going to start getting out some information, and we can see where this might very easily pair with our CTE program, and bring this on potentially as a CTSO, a career and technical student organization, which would be really cool. So that's just kind of some of the things that are going on. We just had a signing day. So I want to use the opportunity to give a shout out. Lindsay Lovrovich, great student athlete, just signed to participate in women's basketball at Boise State University. And then Kaylee Bass is at or just signing with Grand Canyon University to participate in women's golf. So really great to see them. And the next signing period is actually in February, and we'll expect to have at Peninsula about 10 to 12 kids sign at that time. So, any questions?
Yeah, Natalie.
I have 2. I know we're focusing on the high schools, but I'm wondering, is there any way that we can get our middle schools in on these conditionings or these opportunities?
Yeah, all the models around that and the neighboring districts that we've talked to is unlike the high schoolers where they generally have their own transportation, is all the models for the middle school athletics really hinge on when the kids are back in some hybrid model. So there is a proposal, and we have shared some ideas with Brian Wickens and the principals of the middle schools saying, here's what it could look like. It would be something almost more of a clinic looking thing where if you're in on a Monday and a Wednesday, you can participate, whether that's volleyball or basketball. But then on Tuesday, Thursday, the next group, they're doing the same thing. And so you're never fully as a team, together. But you do have the opportunities there. And we have our coaches, of course, that are prepared for that. So there are models out there, but until we get to the point where it looks like middle school will be in person, that is when they would have the opportunity after school to participate in those types of activities.
Okay, makes sense. And then my other question was if you could just give some examples of what an e-sport is.
Ross is our e-sport.
I am so not the e-sport expert, but I do hear a lot of people talking about legacy games, and so boy, there's a whole host, and that's actually what is kind of interesting. Seeing this on the backside as somebody that is continually getting messages, emails from vendors offering different programs, and so I think it will be interesting to see which vendor the WI goes with, and then what different games that they will commit to going with. So I don't know. I know there's going to be a whole range of different games and programs, but no, I couldn't tell you exactly which ones.
Okay, I just kind of wanted to point out this is not to replace sports. And you made a very clear distinction earlier. I just wanted to kind of emphasize that the draw for this is not just because we can't do sports the way that we're used to right now, but it also appeals to some students who don't participate in those traditional sports or activities. This might be an avenue to get them connected in another avenue. So I think that's a big draw to this platform. I know we have some parents who are interested in advocating for that here. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Thanks, Natalie. Other questions or comments?
So quick question, if you could clarify for everybody, what's happening now as far as student athletes? Is that what you would normally see in any off-season workout, like baseball in the fall or whatnot, just like conditioning and such?
Yeah, and that's back to that matrix right now, because we're in a high risk environment based on our county COVID numbers. We can only be in pods of 6. Okay. And we can work out, but you're still distanced 6 feet apart, even though it looks much more like a conditioning, outdoor conditioning. But the coaches are allowed to coach and do some of that. Yeah. Now, when we started this, we were in that moderate level. It could look more like a 3-on-3 basketball thing could break out, or you could do more throwing footballs around. You could have groups larger than 6, but in the high risk thing, that it's very limited. But the benefit is you should see the smiles on these kids' faces. You should see the energy they are bringing. I mean, this is a very positive 1-hour workout, and these kids are thrilled to be there. The coaches are there. It's just a really positive session for these kids.
Oh, that's awesome. But so the athletes can interact with their actual coaches.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Lori. And thank you to both of you. I reflect back on your report to us a year-ish ago about how students participating in sports, their grades are higher, their attendance is higher, and just the fact that you're giving something to these kids during this time, I think is really beneficial, and so thank you for the efforts. And I know WIA also goes into the clubs and other organizations as well, so I'm sure that that's all being looked at currently. So thank you so much, both of you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to our Career Technical Education, College Career and Life Readiness Department, Erin and Ms. Erin O'Neill, and it looks like you may have some guests, and I'll let you introduce as needed. Thanks, Erin.
Wonderful. Just want to check in with everyone to make sure nobody needs a break. You've heard some great news tonight.
I know. We're good, I think.
Okay.
Thank you. Unless you do.
Oh, you bet. You're welcome. Well, thank you so much, Madam President and the Board of Directors, for having us on CTE tonight. It's been a while since we visited with you about career and technical education. And so tonight we really want to highlight some of the things that are happening in career and tech. But before we do that, I just want to recognize the most special piece of career and tech education. And it's also similar to what you heard tonight, and that is, frankly, the people. The teachers whose love for students and passion for career and tech education make great things happen, even in a pandemic. And yeah, it's hard. The community members who rally behind everything that we do, it feels like all I have to do is ask and they show up. A really quick example is Kate Schrock is an amazing teacher out at KPMS, and she's running an after-school club called Cooking with Schrock. So she's teaching kiddos how to cook. And the cool thing about what she's done is she started it way last spring, just as a way to connect with kids. And so she reached out and she said, hey, is there a way we could maybe get a small grant for the utensils and ingredients that some of our families might need? And I reached out to Rotary and they showed up 48 hours later. And that's what happens all the time with career and tech. And that program started out with 10 kiddos last spring, and it has grown to 37 students and parents and grandparents and little siblings join in. So really cool program. Our industry partners, without question, are what also make career and tech education special. They not only challenge us with what we are doing, but they cheer for us. You'll hear more about that here in a little bit. My colleagues, career and tech education couldn't happen well without the brilliant people that are in our district. The technology department is what made our summer satellite institute happen, and everything that you've heard so far this year with remote learning. Our special education department always guides us and makes sure that we can serve our students really well. Our curriculum and assessment department also helps us do what we do really well. We can't do it alone. And then I also just want to recognize you, the board members. Since I got here in 2016, there's nothing that you don't show up for. And I just appreciate all of the support and making good things happen there too. So I want to introduce you to two of those special people that I talked about just a second ago. One of them, our first, is Haley Nichols. Haley Nichols is one of the first community members that I met in Gig Harbor in 2016, and she has not left this important work. She is a CTE General Advisory Co-Chair. And Haley, if you would just take a minute and say hello and share with people why it's important that you do this work.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I love being part of this group. The main reason that I am a champion of CTE is just because of all of the programs and the opportunities available to our students, and the fact that most of them don't even know about it. And that's frustrating to me that there are so many kids that this would benefit. And now over time, that since I've been involved with this with Aaron, I'm seeing how many kids are actually starting to participate and benefit from this. Is very rewarding and really exciting.
Thanks, Haley. And also presenting with us tonight is Ty Robeck. Ty is the principal out at Goodman. And shortly after he left being the principal of an elementary school and came to middle school, and we kind of rallied him around Career Tech too, and he's been an unwavering partner. Ty, though, would you take a minute to say hello and share with folks, why are you part of this work?
Good evening, everyone. Let's see, make sure my mic is on. Aaron's right. When I came from the elementary, I saw CTE as just kind of an elective, and I felt like our electives were a little bit maybe stale. And I got the opportunity to go to a conference and just learned a lot about how, as an educator, maybe I was missing some things and some mistakes I made along the way, and just really changed my view of how we can support kids and give them a vision for where they need to go. And these classes are so necessary and important. And Aaron's really guided me and supported me in really trying to empower our students in our classes and to also create pathways to the high school and ultimately to college. So I'm very excited to be part of this process.
Yay, and thanks for being here, Ty, tonight. Give me just a second. I'd like to share my screen as well. So many of you have probably heard my mantra before, and it really has not changed with regard to career and tech education. And that is that every single one of our students have a dream and a plan, a dream that helps them build and clarify their aspirations of what their opportunities are, not only during their education with us, but also after they leave us. And then oftentimes what can be missing too is a plan to get there. When I think about aspirations, the number one occupation people choose is an occupation that somebody they know does. And so how can we expand the horizons of our kids through different ways in our career and tech education, but then also make sure that they have a clear plan to achieve those aspirations?
So there's a lot going on this slide because it's really cool stuff. So when you ask a kid at Peninsula or Henderson Bay or Gig Harbor, what are they going to do after they graduate? 70% will say they're going to go to college. Actually, only 60% of them do. And then 50% of them do graduate with a degree, a 2 or 4 year degree within the first 6 years. So what happens with those other 50% of the kids? How are we preparing them for careers? So the work that Aaron's been doing within CTE is preparing kids to have degrees outside of, or certifications, degrees, a pathway, a career outside of a 4-year university. And I'm trying to champion these pathways as being huge, successful endeavors for these kids instead of, I'm not going to college, so, therefore I didn't succeed. We have some really remarkable programs that kids can leave with, making $45,000 a year with no debt and, just right off the bat as an 18-year-old. That's a pretty cool thing to be able to come out of high school and be able to do that. If you look at the chart, the red line there is when I left college, the college debt was at 0.2 trillion. And today it's at 1.6 trillion. What that means is outside of mortgages, that's the biggest debt in this nation. And our kids have it. And that's above credit cards, their car loans. And that's pretty scary. That's a lot that they are going to have to, overcome. So I think that this work that is being done here is so important so that our kids can leave and have a dream and a plan and not be in debt.
Thank you, Haley. And I just want to add to that as well that out of those who graduate from college, 43% of them are underemployed and 4% are unemployed. So we're not saying college is not important, but making sure students have a clear plan to what they're going for college for can be really helpful.
And a lot of the CTE classes are little appetizers for that, to say, oh, maybe I do like teaching, or maybe I do like engineering, or, rather than jumping right into, 2 years into college and realizing that.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about 3 examples of that we have in our district. And what are the 5 things that really guide that kind of programming? One is, how can our kids walk away with industry certification, recognized certificates that help them get a job after high school? College credit for those kids that are wanting to go to college. How do we help them get a jump start and minimize that college debt? Core academic credit. You'll see from some of the programs, it's one of our excuses has kind of been that there's not enough room in a student's schedule. So maximizing the core academic credit is really important too, so they can fit this in their schedule. Career connected learning. Remember, I said that the #1 reason people pick careers is because they know someone's in it. And so expanding our relationships of our students with people who are in careers will help them build their aspirations. And then making sure that our programs provide a plethora of opportunities, that it's not really siloed thinking. And we're going to go into a couple examples of those that we have in our district that work really well and do all of these things.
And if I could add real quick, one of the great things about the program too is when we deliver classes, we can help kids also discover things that they might not be interested in as well, which also saves them a lot of time and energy if they go into college and they don't have a career path. If they're not knowing what they're going to do, they're going to spend a lot of money practicing and trying out classes that maybe they're not interested in. So I use the example of, I'm not a big fan of blood. I don't watch ER and those sort of things. And if I take a class, I probably would have said that's not for me. But there are kids who go into college right now, they graduate, and they're picking careers without really understanding what they might be interested in. And that's a lot of money spent. So our goal is also to help kids narrow their pathway as well.
So skilled trades pre-apprenticeship is one of the 3 programs we're going to talk about tonight. These students earn 5 industry certifications. Now, a gap that we had last year because of the pandemic is some of our students weren't able to earn those certifications, but I am so excited to share with you today. We met with, again, one of our industry partners, and our kids are not only going to be able to earn those 5 this year, but we're going to add one, and that's rigging. And we have somebody that's willing to do most of the knowledge skills online and then come out as we can work in small groups and get the skills done for our kids. So that was just a win today, right before this meeting. When we talk about core academic credit, our students get their 3rd year of math as well as PE. If you ever come and visit when we're back in person, usually the first 30 minutes are done really with an obstacle course of pushing wheelbarrows and carrying 2x4s and doing all of those things that not only strengthen our students, but give them what they need physically to do the work that's on the job. 21 college credits our kids can earn in this class. That's a big deal. That is a year almost worth of college before they graduate from high school. Our program is set up not just for carpentry, but an introduction to several trades, which includes masonry and electricity and plumbing. And then the final product is a tiny house. And you heard me mention earlier our community partners. You'll see in the bottom picture, that's the tiny house the kids built. Really cool partnership because Rotary supplies us with all of the things that we need to build the tiny house. Then they turn around and take it back and donate it to LIHI. So when you think of all of the organizations that benefit from this over and above our students, it's just a really win-win partnership. When we talk about the several trades that are addressed in skilled trades, we also bring in those industry experts, people that come in and tell our kids about the journey that they've had, where the pathway takes them. And what's really cool is that they remind kids, look your mentor in the eye, shake hands, being on time is 20 minutes early. And so after they hear this from 15 professionals in the field, guess what they do when they leave? I was really proud one day when one of our graduates came back and he started his job at 7 a.m. And I said, and what time were you there? And he said 6:30 proudly. Next program that's very similar that covers those same indicators that we talked about is the Teacher Academy. Students are prepared to take the Parapro certification. And while that's really important, is for students who aren't ready to go to college yet, becoming a para in a school district gets them way beyond minimum wage, gets them benefits, gives them the opportunity to get experiences that if they decide to become a teacher, they're much better prepared. Core academic credit includes senior English. 3 college credits are available now, and we've been working with Olympic College to hopefully expand that as well. The focus is education and teachers. Ideally and selfishly, we want to bring these kids back to our district to teach in our district once they finish college, if they choose a teaching career. But we also have a really strong focus on social justice and leadership skills that will take students to a better place no matter what they choose to do. I also like to say, as somebody who went into the education program and wasn't maybe sure their first year if they made the best choice for them, I don't know who that is. Anyway, what's really cool is this class has 100% success rate, because for those kiddos that want to go to college and get a teaching degree, that's a win. But for those students who decide teaching isn't for them, that's a win. It still helps build and clarify their aspirations and hones in on what they do or what they don't want to do after graduation. When we talk about career-connected learning, they not only have a rock star teacher in Ms. Wenrick, but they also do classroom visits, classroom observations, and they do a 6-week internship in the spring.
Erin, you should touch on the diversity you're working towards for both of those programs.
Thank you. I didn't look at my notes. Man, one of the things we are just really, really proud of is we have worked with our EL coordinator, Kim Hayes, and we've worked with Margarita Leas this year. And our goal is to build non-traditional participation in this class. I am so proud that one, we have a record number of students, 20 this year, and half of them are students of color, and many of them are bilingual. That is just a huge win. I visited the class the other day and all the students were there and they were so engaged. And Rebecca had a guest teacher and all of them just, again, fully engaged. They're kids to be proud of. So if you get the chance to visit this class this year, I strongly encourage you to do that. Health sciences is another one that's grown the past 4 years. When I came, we had 2 years of Project Lead the Way. And since then, we've grown it to all 4 years. Students can earn up to 15 college credits. I should say 5 years, really, because students also have the chance to earn a medical terminology certification and college credits for that. Students get science and health equivalency in this program pathway. You have guest speakers. One of the really great events each year is that we have industry come and students participate in a conference-like setting where they get to go hear from several people in the health field about, again, their journey and what it takes to get into the health field. Also really excited that next year, we're going to bring this down to the middle school, because it's great if you have a high school pathway, but what's missing is building those aspirations with middle school students. And so next year, we'll also have a new class called Medical Detectives.
And Erin, why don't you tell them how many students are affected by that program? Because that's remarkable.
It is. This year, we have 500 students taking at least one class in the medical science pathway between our 2 comprehensive high schools. Biggest ever. Thank you, Haley.
I like numbers.
Yes.
So just as we go over numbers, a couple of things to think about. We have 65 classes, 54 at the high school, 11 at the middle school. Love to see more at the middle school, and we're working towards that. We have college credit. There's 25 classes that deliver the college credit. So with the funding numbers of that, and Aaron helped me with this because I'm still kind of getting all this, I'm still new to this whole process, but with 29 classes having course equivalency, that means that students can take these courses and still be on time for graduation. And so they're getting the equivalent numbers for their classes, which I think is really important. And we also think about how we can do that with a middle school and supporting as they go up to high school as well. We have 47 teachers in the program, 2 career counselors, 2 paras, and 2 support staff. If I put that into just a framework, that's my middle school. So that's more teachers than my middle school, 2 counselors at my middle school. I have barely enough paras to make that work right now, and support staff. So you think about that as a program across the district, and we're running a whole school. 2,500 students take at least one of these CTE classes, and they learn a little bit about who they are and where they want to go. And nearly, that means that 500 students actually overall for FTE are involved in this process. Again, that's my middle school. So I think that's just a really amazing thing that this program has grown, and Aaron's really seen that vision and moved us forward. And so it's just a really cool thing to see. And I'm just really excited to do more of that at the middle school. So.
I want to take a couple minutes and share with you the great investment we've been able to do too in the last couple of years with our classes. Health Sciences, if you see this table, it is called the Sectra Visualization Table. And what it allows students to see is the pictures are from digitized cadavers. So when we think about the students and what they're learning on the same kind of equipment that students earning their doctorate in medical school are doing. We currently have one of these tables at Peninsula High School, and this year we'll be able to order for Gig Harbor High School. So when you think about those 500 kids in this pathway, they're all going to be able to access this. Remotely, what's really cool about this table is students have access to what's called the VH dissector. So while it's really hard to do dissections remotely, our kids are able to do that virtually through this digital platform. And when we think about that, that's where, remember I said the support of the brilliant people in the other departments, that couldn't have happened without the efforts of Chris Hagel and the technology department, making sure that students can access it on their Chromebook remotely. So a lot of work happened behind that to make sure it happens. And then the little skeleton up in the corner, that is called a mannequin used in the health sciences pathway. And it is kind of claymation. So while the skeleton is hard, what the kids do is take clay and create the systems that they learn about in those classes. I'm really proud that 200 of these kits went home during remote learning. And so you heard earlier about the importance of non-digital learning. We've got lots of kits in the hands of kids where they're actually still getting to do this right now during remote learning. Second area of investment is computer science. 4 years ago, we had 2 classes available to students at the high school level, Intro to Computer Science and AP Computer Science A. And in the last few years, we've also been able to grow that. We've added AP Computer Science Principles at the high school level. And then we were also able to, a couple of years through a grant, bring it down to the middle school. Now what we learned, and you heard this a little bit about the STEM curriculum, is sometimes it takes a couple of years to figure out if this is the right fit for our district. So the good news is that program was grant funded. And what we also learned is that it wasn't right for our kids. It was so intense on the computer, and our kids, especially at the middle school, need some hands-on. They need to see how it works. They need to do what Ashley mentioned earlier about try and test. And so the new programming that we're doing that through is through Project Lead the Way, where we now offer 2 computer science classes at the middle school. The first is Computer Science for Innovators and Makers, where the students not only learn how to code, but then they take that and use that with microbits. The second is App Creators, where students through MIT App Creator learn how to create apps that some schools across the country have had students eventually sell. We're not quite there yet. We're in our first year and we're learning. But what's really cool is not only the kits that have gone home during remote learning, but the intense professional development that has occurred for our instructors. We've had one instructor at each of the middle school go through each one of these trainings. And the reason that's so important is, well, the reason it's special is we have staff members willing to do that. And the reason it's so important is that computer science is oftentimes a very, very difficult area to get somebody to leave industry and come into teaching. And so this way we can still make sure our students have access to this kind of learning. Skilled trades, more state-of-the-art equipment this year. Our kids haven't had the chance to use it yet, but we were able to purchase it from last year's funds. Each of our high schools now have a CNC router machine laser engraver, the same that's used in industry. And then also when we think about, again, hands-on learning, this machine as well as a laser engraver and 3D printers can help support not only the skilled trades, but manufacturing, engineering and design, and other things as well. So we're excited to get those up and running and get the staff trained on it. The other interesting thing is high school seems to have a little bit more funding than middle schools. So it's oftentimes hard to get the industry level equipment down at the middle schools. So this is one way we can do that, is upgrade at the high school maybe a little sooner than normal. And then the equipment that we have that's at the high school level could be moved down to the middle school to get them greater access to. Then we're also, you probably are aware that for a couple of years, we weren't able to run the manufacturing lab at Peninsula because we didn't have a certified instructor. So just really proud last year that we also were able to upgrade that lab with lots of new equipment, lots of new tools and things like that. And then we're also pretty excited about the bond and the ability to not only upgrade the equipment that kids are going to use, but create a really welcoming environment for the students that use that classroom for those classes. When we think of remote learning, pretty excited about the skilled trades pre-apprenticeship students as we created toolboxes, pretty comprehensive toolboxes for them, along with materials like wood and nails to do some of the practice work that they could do at home within a safety realm, if that makes sense. One of our schools, Gig Harbor, was able to bring in small groups where they started to learn a little bit. Have not been able to do that at Peninsula High School, but we are looking so forward to bringing students back to do those. It's hard to learn a table saw remotely. And so we're really looking forward to the opportunity to be able to do that.
So that's a lot of stuff that you have put in place over the last few years. So I applaud you because it's remarkable. Now we got to get the word out that all of these great things exist for our students. So this year we're going to spend a lot of time educating parents and students. We're forming partnerships with local businesses. The Chamber of Commerce has agreed to let us do some speaking engagements at public affairs forums so we can start to advertise some of these programs for the kids and kind of change their mindset that there's other successful ways that their kids can leave high school other than just going to a four-year university. We're also going to be developing additional pathways. So that's what this slide is about, is sort of a 3-year plan here. You know, sometimes we like to bite off more than we can chew. And so we, the leadership committee kind of just broke down like, what do we want to do each year and focus on? Because sometimes it's hard to move anything forward when you're focusing on too many things. So, you know, computer science this year, app creators, and those are going down into the middle school, which is really exciting because this is where you really hook those kids in computer science and get them very interested. And for them to be competitive when they do decide to go to college and pursue that. In 2021, 22, Erin's going to talk about this in a bit, the National Navy Defense Cadet Program. That one's very exciting. And then again, exploring more on the computer science pathways next year. And then 2022 to 23. I think is really cool. This is my favorite, is the energy and sustainability pathway. There are thousands of jobs available to kids with certification that are earning a livable wage with minimal training and education. And this is something we greatly need. We need to save the planet. So I'm pretty excited about exploring that. So really it's about educating parents, educating kids, connecting them with industry partners, getting them excited about these different careers. And that's the work we got to do.
Before we dive into the National Navy Defense Cadet Corps, I want to share a little bit about the CTE General Advisory, which is a critical part of what we do. One of the barriers to maybe moving faster, farther, was that we had such a large group. And what we were finding is that every time we met, the group changed because we couldn't all meet all the time. And so one of the ways that we tackled that this year is we have a smaller leadership team of about 9 folks who have agreed to meet every month. And they're going to put the general path for the CTE advisory in place. And then we'll bring the larger group of CTE teachers and our industry partners together 3 times a year to kind of flush out the action plan to meet those goals. So far, I think we've got a lot done this year too. So I'm really proud to also share with you that's a little bit later on new business, but we thought we'd share with it during this program. And that is, we have been approved by the Secretary of the Navy for the National Navy Defense Cadet Corps. This is really exciting because it's one of those pathways that really we had a gap in our district when we think about the military pathway and military science. But remember those 5 characteristics we talked about earlier, but also promoting programming that doesn't necessarily take you down just one path, but opens the door to a variety of things. And this is what one of the programs that we believe does exactly that. The NNDCC, as you will get used to the acronym, is really a reflection of JROTC programs throughout the country. The difference is, there's really 2 differences. One is JROTC, there's a finite number of programs. So you only get access to open one of those up if another program closes. The waiting list to get a JROTC program is about 10 years. We can't wait that long. And so that's when the NNDC program came to our attention. And it is a pure reflection of the JROTC program. The difference is the district and community fully fund the NNDCC. However, it also puts it on us on a faster track to become a JROTC program. And once we get there, the military then will fund about half the program. So this is a great start to get to that end faster. This is also a 4-year program, district-wide, although located at Peninsula High School. We will start it in the fall of 2021. Originally, Dr. Jarvis challenged me to maybe January, and I'm like, nah. Let's do this really well and take a couple more months. So we will be doing it in the fall of 2021. But it also, not only military science, but citizenship, leadership, naval orientation, naval history, electronics, all of those skills that help our students be really successful, but also open the door to their aspirations is the goal behind this. Timeline, I can sure you have a more detailed timeline in your board agenda, but just wanted to hit some highlights. We're doing the board presentation, of course, tonight. We're initiating an advisory. Our first meeting will be scheduled now for November 30th. We're going to be taking a look in the next couple of weeks at the space and the allocation of space that we need to run this program really well. We have our eyes on a space at Peninsula High School, but it will need a little bit of updating and remodeling to do it well, but we think it will serve the purposes that we need here. We want to invite our advisory and other interested parties to tour a couple of NJROTC programs in the area. South Kitsap has been already amazing, reaching out to us to see what they can do to help. The same for Issaquah, the same for Shelton. We also want to do, and this is really a critical piece, we want to post the job offering for this very soon with the goal of hiring somebody to start work in February. And the reason for that is all of the components that are required to do this well really take some dedication and some time. And we also want to set it off to a really good start. And so hiring somebody that's really high quality, learning the area if they're not from here, doing community outreach, meeting kids, marketing the program, those are all going to be critical pieces. And so that person will hopefully come on board this spring, and we will kick off the program in the fall. In addition to that, we're also looking at maybe offering, if we can, a week-long camp this summer to build that sense of belonging, build that sense of ownership in the program from our first set of cadets. We're making this a CTE course, so we'll have to do all of the paperwork and that kind of stuff to OSPI. So we'll be doing that in January, updating the course catalog, making sure that the information is out to students and families as well. And then also utilizing whoever we hire in that place in the spring to acquire all the equipment and the supplies that are needed, and of course, market and recruit students. I want to draw your attention to, at the end of your information, you have our full program evaluation for CTE. Some of it's interesting and some of it's, you know, being in compliance. And so we wanted to share with you really why we do all of this work, and the students are why we do all of this work. Building their aspirations and making sure that they have a clear plan to get there is our goal. I'll stop sharing my screen, but then open it up for questions.
Hi, Haley and Erin, thank you so much. This is so exciting. So I will open up for questions, comments from everyone. Chuck?
First off, I love it. You had me at hello. I love all of the programs you're offering, anything. And I know that right now we're also still offering some opportunity for kids to go to auto shop classes, I think in Bremerton.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any thoughts of expanding for like a metal shop or metal fabrication in district?
You know, Chuck, I think you know me well enough. I want to do it all.
Okay, let's go.
and here's where we get a little stuck is the cost of programs, which is why we have West Sound Tech or skill centers across Washington State, right? Typically it's because there's a district that can't fill a class or it's really just too costly. And so we always have to weigh and measure what classes are already available through West Sound, even though we want to keep kids with us, what classes are available through West Sound Tech and our community colleges, and then what can we afford to do. That said, that's one of the reasons, your exact example is one of the reasons we built skilled trades to make sure kids can have a little bit of a lot of different pathways. And so one of the units, I know it's not metal, but one of the units is welding, which again gives the kids enough labor to decide if they want to maybe go into that field and explore it more. So long story short, we weigh a lot of factors, including, you know, it's also one thing if you build a metal shop and it's full of kids all day long, but it's another if you put that kind of money into a lab and you can only fill 1 or 2 periods. So we're weighing and measuring all of that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah.
Did you have other questions?
Just one more. I know that in the past we were turning down kids that were trying to get into the CTE class because it was full. Where are we at on that situation now? Are we still able to accommodate everybody?
So we have, you mean the skilled trades career apprenticeship specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 22 kids in that class. So we had room for a couple of more. Last year we had a waiting list, but it wasn't enough to build another section. So it's another one of those that we weigh and measure expanding it or not. Of course, we always still encourage kids to take intro to manufacturing and other classes that might help build their skills. And we also focus on serving seniors or those students who will leave us first, if that makes sense. So we make sure seniors have the opportunity, and then we go down to juniors if needed. So.
Okay. And just Austin Barrick, who went through your program, is doing great. He's a full-time employee for me right now. And so he's doing well.
Wonderful. Yeah, he was one of our first. So we're pretty proud of him. Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck. David.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yep. First, just want to say thank you to Haley and the other business leaders and around the Gig Harbor area for all your commitment to our young folks and your leadership and vision that there are other alternatives than a four-year college degree to being successful. Thank you, Ty, for your commitment. It's not like you don't have enough on your plate already for you to also give your time towards this. Thank you for that. I think Aaron, you and I share the love of CTE. You know, when I was a youngster in Texas, our vocational education building was the size of Goodman Middle School. And I took electronics, metal shop, and wood shop, which prepared me not for a four-year college degree, but which I ended up getting eventually, but to go into the military and learn. I went in the military as an electronics technician, but I learned how to do rigging, welding, underwater welding, and saturation diving. So I think the hands-on training that I got in high school definitely prepared me for my military career. And then during my military career, I was able to get my four-year degree. But I'm really, really proud of the efforts that you and your staff have done. Because as you know, and I've said publicly before, when I got on the school board 7 years ago, the big emphasis was everyone needed to get a four-year degree, and that was it. And since then, there's been more and more understanding of the need for additional pathways, not only for CTE classes and the amazing additional classes you've added that were never even dreamed of, obviously, when we were young, but also the Navy Cadet Corps that's coming, dear to my heart, and just that other additional pathway that even if taking CTE classes encourages them, like when someone said earlier, to pursue that in college, I think Ty said, because I agree. And I know people with master's degrees that are, you know, a bank teller. Nothing wrong with being a bank teller, but they have a master's degree in something and they're making barely minimum wage because that's not the career that they actually wanted. So my hat goes off to Haley and the business community, Ty, and especially to you, Aaron. Job well done.
Thanks, David. Lori or Natalie, any questions, comments? Natalie?
Just a comment. Of course, this is super exciting. I'm really glad to be able to work with you. And everyone probably already knows this is one of the smartest group of people I've ever worked with. And you come with the best ideas. I really love that we have kind of tailored it down to manageable chunks, because as Aaron mentioned, you can sit around a room with all these great ideas and get nowhere other than tossing around great ideas. So I like that we have some focus. And Haley, I think you mentioned either today or in another meeting, we've got to get the education out to our families that this is opportunity and opportunities for careers outside of going to college, but also opportunities for kids who may go on to college and just want to try something different. And I feel like I am your guinea pig. I have a freshman who wants to go to college, but he said he really wants to take an auto shop class. So I am trying to, you know, I've got these baby legs here, trying to walk away from saying, sorry, you can't do that. You've got to take something else instead. So I just appreciate the focus that this district has put on these new platforms and exciting opportunities for kids. And lastly, with the Cadet Corps program, I'm over the moon, as you know. It's really, really cool to be sitting here. I think it's been 2 years since Aaron, you and Deb and I and a couple others sat in a room and thought about whether or not this is something that could work here. And the response has been overwhelming. And I know that the work that has gone into it has been as well. So just thank you. This is exciting for all of us.
Thanks, Natalie. Lori?
Just really echo all that's already been said, but a big thank you to all who have, you know, well done, everybody. This is so exciting. And I think we were talking about this today. I think the post-COVID, the world that will be, I should say, the post high school world after the COVID pandemic is going to look a lot different. And as far as education and the paths that people choose and the paths that are available. And I think it's going to be both, there's going to be a lot more demand, but also a lot more opportunity for this. I think it's very well the very thing that is maybe needed to change the culture to where we need to get to. But this is such a great, not that I'm suggesting a pandemic is a great thing to change. I'm just saying that, I think a push for everyone to go to a 4-year post high school, college education isn't what's needed. And this is such a great, all these programs are just so great. So I appreciate the work.
Thanks, Lori.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, Erin, it's been a pleasure watching you grow this over the years. I remember initial conversations about all of this many years ago in your 5-year plan and all that. So it's fun to see that you still have that same energy and it's actually even grown for these programs. And I'm thrilled that we're making this investment in the program and the resources because as Haley pointed out, those numbers are supported with where our kids are going. And so if we are able to launch them into a world better prepared, I thoroughly think this is a good investment for our district. So thank you all very much. So, all right, anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ty and Haley.
All right. We will now move on to new business, and I will go on to item 8.1, approval of change order number 6 to Neely Construction Company Elementary School number 9 contract. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Chuck, I got it. Everyone needs to unmute now. Lori, okay. Is there any discussion before prior to the vote? Okay, this moved by Chuck and seconded by Lori to approve item 8.1. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is carried. Item 8.1 has been approved. I will now do item 8.2, a first reading of the K-5 grade STEM curriculum adoption. This is a first reading. There's no action required. The item will be brought back for a second reading and adoption at our next meeting. If the board has any questions or comments, please submit those to the superintendent at your earliest convenience. So any other questions that we had from earlier, email him, please. Item 8.3, policy revision, first reading as well. Policy 4275, distribution of materials. This is a first reading, no action is required. This item will be brought back for a second reading and adoption at our next meeting. If the board has any questions or comments, please submit those to the superintendent at your earliest convenience. Item 8.4, policy revision, first reading. Policy 3413, student immunization and life-threatening health conditions. As this is a first reading, no action is required. This item will be brought back for a second reading and adoption at our next meeting. If the board has any questions or comments, please submit those to the superintendent at your earliest convenience. Item 8.5, resolution number 20-19, certification of 2021 I said it wrong again, Art.
Excess levy.
Excess levy collection. I want to make sure I said that right. Is there any discussion on this item prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve item 8.5?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Chuck and seconded by Lori to approve item 8.5. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is carried. Item 8.5 has been approved. Item 8.6, approval of Naval National Defense Cadet Corps.
I think Natalie ought to do that.
Is there a motion to approve item 8.5? Natalie?
Gladly move to approve.
Is there a second? David?
I would be honored to second the Navy National Defense Cadet Corps.
Is there any discussion prior to the vote? It has been moved by Natalie and seconded by David to approve item 8.5. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Item 8.5 has been approved. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
David, thank you. It has been moved by Lori and seconded by David to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? The motion is carried. The consent agenda has been approved. We have already done item 10, so we move on to item 11, board discussion and comments. I'll start with Natalie.
Oh, okay.
You were smiling.
Great. Well, long meeting. I have a lot of notes. I'm going to try to keep it short. I know we've been here for a long time. I want to start with Veterans Day. Was just yesterday. I want to recognize and thank David Olson as a veteran on our board for his service, as well as that of our many staff members who have prior service as well, and our Blue and Gold Star families that we have in our district. I just wanted to thank you for what you bring to this district by way of your experiences, your diversity, your flexibility, and what you teach us about friendship and service. We're better for all of you, and we learn from you. Also, in regard to Veterans Day, yesterday we had a really fantastic celebration, COVID style, with in Uptown with the city of Gig Harbor. It was just fantastic to see so many of our students out there, Scouts and Key Club and Interact Club, working to serve the community and honoring our veterans. My parents love attending every year. It's something that they look forward to. We had a lot of really positive feedback yesterday at that event. We were able to introduce the coming of the Cadet Corps. We've got a lot of people who are ready to jump in, kids participating and people who want to support that. So that was just great to hear. And then I know schools all over the district have been doing their Veterans Day performances. I wanted to just give one shout out to Voyager. Mrs. Schwab does an amazing job every year, and COVID style Veterans Day performance was nothing less than spectacular yet again. So thank you for that. If you don't follow Voyager Elementary School on Facebook, I think you should just check it out and just see the most sincere Veterans Day slideshow that I've come across in a long time. I want to thank you also to Art and Dale for letting me come out and spend a morning with you. It fills my bucket, as we say, to be able to see kids and teachers and staff in their element. It was wonderful to just be outside and open doors and see smiles and see kids, like we have talked about so many times tonight, masks on, attestation forms in hand. They know the rules, they're distancing, the temperature screens and everything. It's just what we do now. And Art and Dale, you're doing it really well. I know everyone else is as well, but I enjoyed being with you and being in the classroom and listening to kids talk about what they're thankful for. I am looking forward to jumping in and visiting some of our online classes. I know they're going really well as well. So I'm hoping to meet up with some teachers and jump in on a Zoom. And after tonight, I think my first stop is going to be Mentor on a Friday so I can join a dance party. Okay, I'm running through. Gig Harbor High School senior parents put together a really awesome trunk or treat, and I just appreciate all the effort and creativity that goes into making something special for these kids that are losing out on their regular things. So thank you to all who worked towards that. Appreciation for this testing task force. We don't know what it's going to look like or what we're going to be able to accomplish, but there are a lot of very smart, very hardworking people who are working together to try to pull off something that really meets the needs of our population, our students, and our staff. And I think we're going to come up with something that's great because we've got fantastic people working on it. A challenge I want to throw down to Gig Harbor High School. I don't know if you guys have seen Peninsula High School band and cheerleaders put out their fight song video, and it was so cool to watch. I grew up in the southeast part of the United States. So your fight song is a part of your identity. It is something that still moves me to tears when I hear, I went to 2 high schools, but that first high school where our fight song was just, it was part of who we were. To see Seahawks participating in something like that and sharing it with us was super cool. So I haven't seen if Gig Harbor has done anything similar. If you haven't, I would love to. So ding, ding, I am posing a challenge there to you. And then lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge this has been a really difficult year. We've made some really, really difficult choices and decisions, and they've been changed and revised and challenged and canceled and delayed. And it's going to happen again. And I just wanted to share my gratitude for the people who turn our decisions into action. I know it's not easy, and I know that we are asking a lot. I'm also very grateful for the people who are charged with making those difficult decisions, knowing that with each call you make, somebody is going to be very disappointed and very angry or left confused. And it's a big burden to carry. And we appreciate those who are willing to step up and make those decisions on our behalf. I'm mindful that as we shift from remote to in-person and maybe even back, that it's difficult. And I know that the transitions are hard. And it's not ideal to change teachers. It's not ideal to change platforms. I don't think any of this is going to get easier until we are back in person. And just know that I, as we all are, am listening and just encouraging everyone to just do the best that you can do. And we see those efforts and they don't go unnoticed, whether staff or students or parents. We appreciate the efforts that you make. And like I said, we know we're asking for the world, and every day you're delivering it. And we recognize and appreciate that. I am grateful for the feedback that we receive from our community. It's not always great, but I appreciate those parents and those teachers and those family members who offer suggestions and solutions that help us direct where we go and do what's best for our kids, because I believe above all else, we are here to serve the kids, and we're in it together. So saving the best for last, I'm grateful for our students. They're why we are here. They're the reason why we make these tough decisions. And I just want you to know that they're at the heart of every decision that I make. And so leave off with wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving with their families, and be safe and be well. And thank you for just being part of this fantastic district with us.
Thanks, Natalie. That was one. Thank you very much. Lori?
I think we should end the meeting on what
I
Natalie
know,
said.
I do too. It's
That's
wonderful.
all.
Yep, that's good.
Well, just what Natalie said, and then just I will only add that tonight's meeting was long, but when I reflect on it, it was a great meeting in that it really showcased all of many great things about our district, from curriculum and all that goes into choosing that, to athletics, and and then the CTE and all the great programs and the staff people and all the millions of hours that are put into all of it. And but I will say one of the highlights for me tonight was simply Chris's story about the students and their bandwidth and how they figured out, and they're 9 or whatever, how if they all turn their cameras off, then the one person can share what they need to share, and they'll have enough to to be able to connect. And that was a great story about kids. Like I always say, kids only know what they know, and everybody's just learning and going forward together and really growing in ways that they didn't expect to grow this year, as we all are. So, and just a quick shout out, just specifically, I guess, to the principals of our high schools. I have just randomly heard great things about all 3 of them in the last week or so. I think it's been a tough go for everybody, all that's employed by the district, but the administrators and principals have had a lot on their plate, and I've heard great things about their communication. I heard specifically that one was really great to work for from a teacher this week, and so great job all. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Lori. Chuck?
I think it's all been said, but I was very happy to hear from the superintendent search group from Northwest Leadership some of the information that they had found out. So that was it was good to hear. I feel a lot of that, but it was good to hear about the celebrations and the challenges and the attributes. So I want to thank the PEA leadership, Carol, Mary, for talking to us and expressing their concerns. We are not hardened, and working in emergency medicine, I get to see a lot of things in the community. I get to see a lot of people that are ill. And so I understand the effects of this firsthand. So I don't want any of our teachers to have to deal with that. And I don't want them to think that we are trying to put them in a situation where they would have to. Yeah. And I see so many great things going on in our community with the support of everybody. And so I'm going to leave it at that.
Thanks, Chuck. David?
Yeah, I just a couple things that, I mean, everybody's just said everything that needed to be said, but I just wanted to, I got, like Natalie, I got to a couple days ago, tour a couple schools, and just to be able to meet with a couple principals, you know, with Ty and David, and hear some of the amazing stories that the teachers and staff are doing in those schools to make the student learning successful. I won't share the names of some of the people, but they're just doing amazing work to make the kids and the staff feel normal, and to help with the social and emotional learning, and just make sure everybody's having a positive experience, both in person and with the remote learning. Just they're doing a phenomenal job. And like Natalie said, when I popped into a couple of the classrooms, the teachers were excited. The social distancing was taking place. All the masks were on the kids. I think one of the early fears, like they said, kids would be pulling their masks off. I didn't see any of that. I saw kids that were paying attention to the teachers and were learning. And so I don't know if that's how it was the first 2 days, but it's certainly how it is now. So I was very impressed with the leadership of Ty and David and their staff and all the teachers and paras and everybody else. Missed my first veterans in-person program at Harbor Heights for the first time in 7 years. So that was sort of a bummer, but the online versions were amazing. And so that was great. Appreciate that. It's been a couple weeks since our last board meeting, and we got to tour ES9 in that space. So I want to thank Art and Vicky and Patrick for arranging that tour for us of ES9. That school is really coming together well. Very, very impressive, and those kids are really going to have an amazing place to go to school, as well as the teachers. And then just, I mean, it's already been said, but, you know, I want to also thank Dr. Chen, who's been a longtime friend, Tacoma Pierce County Department of Health, Executive Dan Meyer, and Councilmember Young for their efforts to establish that pilot program and involve the Peninsula School District and those other school districts as a way to help keep our kids in school, keep our teachers and staff safe. So I really appreciate that work and partnership. And lastly, what's already been said, there are positive things taking place in our district every day. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And I said one of my words at the beginning of the meeting, so I will just say one last comment is, Dr. Jarvis, thank you. A lot of this is on your shoulders as we have gone through this, and so thank you for your leadership. I know it's not been easy for any of us, but I know that this is weighing heavy on you as well. So thank you for remembering the kids and keeping the kids as the main focus of what you do and what we do. So thank you. This was a long meeting, but it's our only November meeting, so kind of squeezed to that point. With that, our next meeting is in December, and there's no executive session tonight, and our meeting is adjourned at 9:20, unless Dr. Jarvis has anything to say. Sorry, I meant to ask that earlier. Dr. Jarvis, do you have any closing comments?
Only that I'm just very proud to have been able to present the balance of programs that you saw tonight, and the people. There's just great work going on, and so much effort has gone into talking about the pandemic and really trying to get school open and do something we've never done before. Tonight just felt really good to be able to share the variety of things that are happening, and that's just the beginning. So it feels wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Completely agree. It felt good. All right, now 9:21.